We're streaming now, yeah, here we are. We're streaming now, yeah, here we are. We're streaming now, yeah, yeah, yeah. We're streaming now. How you guys doing? We are, in fact, streaming. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? Conton. Uh-oh. What's with the face, Conton? What's with the face, my man? I always get worried whenever you do the little face. I always get worried. You always come in here with some kind of crazy story, my man. I feel like you are on the front lines of reality. That reality is basically decided. This guy, Conton, he's going to just be on the front line of everything. We're going to make him see a bunch of crazy shit. And some crazy nonsense and all kinds of lunacy is going to happen to this guy. I hope you're doing okay out there, my man. I hope you're doing okay out there, my man. Today, I just went to the beach. Today, I just went and hung out on the beach. Had a lovely time on the beach. Got some chicken wings. Came home. Talked to my mom. Cleaned up my apartment. Rusty, good to see you. Getting things ready for... I got somebody coming to look at the apartment to see if they are going to come in and be a roommate. And boy, coming in and having a roommate. Yeah. While I'm sort of loath to have a roommate, you know, like it's nice to live alone. It's nice to not have to answer to anybody. It's nice to just have the space for myself. At the same time, like I've shuffled things around. I've set things up already in this space here so that everything is how it is, and it seems completely great. Seems perfectly fine. Everything's completely lovely. And having half my rent paid by somebody here, yeah, I could go for that. I could definitely go for somebody moving in here and having half my rent covered. Yeah, that sounds great. That sounds real great. I feel like it will alleviate a lot of tension and a lot of pressure in my life, and that I'll be able to just like focus on the things that I care about and do the things that I want. And it means that I'll likely be able to work less capitalism, right? Do less of the capitalism and focus on this stream and focus on, you know, getting some sleep. Do you guys know that sleep is important? Did you guys know that sleep is important? So, thank you for being here. Good to see you. Here today, I'll draw your attention to what's on the screen. Middle East, who backs immediate ceasefire? Unsurprisingly, I'm not quite sure why they've organized the no section the way that they have. Maybe it's just to illustrate, like, is this the yes side? I guess they're excluded, and there's like the standard placement for those flags, I suppose. But as you can see, the entire rest of the world, which includes most of Europe, Australia, Canada, who backs immediate ceasefire? Everybody. Who doesn't? Who is saying no to the ceasefire? Britain, the United States, and Israel. So, who's out of step with the international world community? Who's out of step with what's happening in the world? Oh, unsurprisingly, it's the countries that voted against the idea that food should be a human right. Unsurprisingly, the people who said, no, food is not a human right. Humans do not have the right to have food. We should withhold food from people so that they have to sell themselves into a labor market in order to get food through a process that any rational person would call wage slavery, right? We own the means of production, we own the ability to create food, and we will withhold that food in order to get your labor so that you can get access to food. And that ethos, we're seeing very clearly, if you are willing to withhold food from people, if you are willing to withhold food and shelter from your own citizens, no less, let alone the people of the world, if you're willing to do that, then you're willing to murder people. You're willing to drop bombs on people. You're willing to put people into an open-air prison. You're willing to create circumstances that lead to perpetual, endless war. And of course, you're willing to do so by propping up a ridiculous, false ideology that pretends as though the people who are doing the bombing or the withholding are the heroes. That the real good guys in the story are the people who are starving others out. The real heroes are the wardens of the prison. That's historically always been the truth, right? That if you watched a movie about a prison, right? It's always the wardens that look like the good guys, right? It's always the prison guards who come across as looking like the heroes, right? Like, I know that when I watched The Shawshank Redemption, I was really rooting for the warden, you know? It was a real injustice what happened to the warden. Ligon to Z, today's so busy, I almost forgot the stream. Good to see you, bud. Good to see you. I'm glad to hear that things are busy, dude. Like, busy can be good. Busy can be good, right? And hopefully it's busy in a good way for you. Hopefully things are materializing and coming together and structuring together in a positive way for you. That a real positive piece of news, we've got 2 new subscribers just yesterday. That's very good. So they'll hopefully be coming into the Discord. The channel continues to grow. My influence spreads throughout this land, because I think that there are not that many voices who are willing to call the situation accurately, or in the manner to which I do. This situation that's happening in the Middle East is a case in point, very clear example of what I'm talking about. Here's a great tweet. U.S. politicians have gone from expressing support only for Israel, with no concern for Palestinian civilians, to saying that any support for Palestinian freedom means you support terrorism. This shows exactly how there is no right way to advocate for Palestine. So everybody else in the media sphere says, of course what Hamas did was horrible, and of course that, oh my God, what an overwhelming, holy cow, we condemn the actions of Hamas. And if you don't say that, right, if you don't start by effacing Hamas, if you don't begin with that process of, oh my God, we have to condemn what the Rebel Alliance did, what Luke Skywalker and Leia and Han Solo and Chewbacca did is an absolute abhorrent thing that we must absolutely condemn. And if you don't say that, then you can't be part of the media conversation. You will be purged, you will be banned, you will be removed from the conversation if you say what the Rebel Alliance did was correct. That if you say they blew up the Death Star and they should have blown up the Death Star, then you get removed and silenced, and you're not even allowed to come into the conversation. And then you get condemned, and you get called an anti-Semite, and you get called all of these things if you side fully with the Rebel Alliance, right? So you have to begin the conversation by saying that what the Rebel Alliance did was wrong. And what we see very clearly is that doing so doesn't matter. That by playing the game of both sides, by trying to engage in the both sidism that exists, it doesn't matter to the capitalists. That in the end, the capitalists are going to roll through, right? The empire is going to continue. They're going to continue blowing up planets. They're going to continue going around destroying their cultures and societies and all of this kind of stuff. And they're not going to stop, right? And they're going to look at the people who are saying, of course we condemn Hamas, but you have to understand what's going on in Palestine, and they're going to treat them like traitors too, right? So you might as well stand up and say, The Rebel Alliance has every right to fight against Darth Vader and should have blown up the Death Star. And full support. And the reason why I speak in that kind of code is obvious. Because we know the purges are coming. Like, we know the purges are coming. So why bring the hammer down, right? On purpose. Bex, good to see you, my man. Question about Hamas. What makes them different to Nat Turner or John Brown? How many humble, salt-of-the-earth working whites got killed by Nat's rebellion? Yeah, that's a good analogy, right? Like John Brown, I'm not that familiar with Nat Turner, but John Brown I'm fairly familiar with. People who fought against slavery in the South, right? And John Brown was like as explicit as it is. He was like, yeah, I'll just shoot a slaver. Oh, you own slaves? Boom, right? And nobody would ever, like, who's going to stand up and be like, oh, those guys, they shouldn't have done that. They shouldn't have been fighting against the slavers of the South. I tell you what, like, it's very, very interesting, odd, of course, but interesting certainly to watch a people who have been talking for the last decade or so now, at least, if not longer, about the legacy of slavery in their own country, about really showing how the Confederacy was wrong, right? But the moment they see a similar type of situation happening in front of them, and a situation it could be argued that is much worse, that's much worse than the slavery of the South. That what we are seeing is a literal open-air prison with walls around it and checkpoints around it and snipers picking off children, carpet bombing, white phosphorus falling from the sky. One society, like the Israelis, can literally shut the lights off on the Palestinians. They can just go and shut the power and shut the water off. Like, that fact alone should absolutely obliterate anybody walking around and saying this is a both sides issue. Anyone that is pretending that this is a both sides issue, like, in what universe do you live? One side can literally pull a switch and shut the electricity and water and sewage and travel and everything off for the other side, while the other side has no recourse. Their recourse is literally deal with it. Just exist in that way. How is it a both sides situation when one side clearly, obviously, literally has the power? Literally has the power. They can turn the lights off, like, in a literal way. And so how could you possibly stand in front of me and say that this is a both sides issue? Like, it's so shocking to see us be so purposefully and intentionally dim-witted. That, you guys know me, I've been struggling with the third prong, right? And I've been waffling between the worship of stupidity, the worship of ignorance, the worship of the hierarchy, all this kind of stuff. I'm kind of back on ignorance. Like, why else would you be against someone being woke if it wasn't for your celebration of being asleep, right? Like, someone will post someone saying something objectively correct and true and say that it is woke and that makes it bad. So it's a celebration of being asleep. It's a celebration of ignorance. It's a celebration of our side says it's good, so therefore it is. It's incredible to watch, especially in a society that has its own personal history and legacy that it is currently analyzing and currently discussing its own history of slavery, right? Like in Django, when Leonardo DiCaprio's character gets shot, you don't think, oh goodness, both sides, right? Like, you understand that there's a power dynamic and you understand that Leonardo DiCaprio's character is the villain. And yet, for some reason in this conflict, there's this odd both sidesing thing. Nat Turner and his rebellion killed white people specifically, directly, because being a white person was a direct and inseparable condition of chattel slavery. Turner wasn't wrong. I mean, like, you can't be... There is no neutral position. That's what liberals pretend, right? That's how they kind of begin the conversation for themselves. That they pretend as though there can be a neutral position. They sit there and say, "Oh well, I'm a centrist, right? I'm a reasonable centrist," and of course we understand, right? Far left, we're going to get everyone's basic needs met. Far right, we're going to exterminate entire social groups because they're impure. Centrists, I literally cannot tell the two apart. And so, if you are a quote unquote centrist, when the circumstances are like this, you are allying with the oppressors. You are allying with the people who are willing to round other people up. If you're willing to turn a blind eye and do nothing, while one side carpet bombs another and shuts their power off and assassinates people, right, then you're siding with those people. And it's very straightforward. And just because you refuse to acknowledge it doesn't make it so. And so if the side that you are turning a blind eye to in their bombing decides to turn around and attack you as you turn the blind eye, you don't really have the credibility to cry about it. You're going to, because your whole position is fraudulent from the beginning and you are a fraud. So you are going to pretend as though I'm just an innocent bystander, as if there is such a thing. Right? As if there is such a thing. That's the thing that I said it before and I'll say it again. This conflict has brought about an argument from the liberal class, and that argument is that there is such a thing as an innocent Nazi. The innocent Nazi. Like that's what we are. That's the premise that we are being told to swallow. That there can be such a thing as an innocent Nazi. No. There are Nazis that do less, right? There are Nazis that do less, I'm sure. And there are Nazis that just sort of stand by, and there are Nazis that shuffle papers, right? There's just Nazis that do paperwork, right? There's the paperwork Nazi. And there's the manufacturing Nazi, and there's the food growing Nazi, right? There's the Nazi that makes the costumes, that makes the uniforms. There's the Nazis that are sewing, and there's the nurse Nazis. There are doctor Nazis, right? Like there are Nazis that exist in order to nurse other Nazis back to health, right? So not every Nazi is the one with the gun shooting like innocent children in the back of the head, and like not every Nazi is going, "Oh, we gotta go in there and massacre" and all that kind of stuff. But they are hearing that, and they're standing by and doing nothing about it, right? That they're watching fellow citizens get their doors kicked in, and then going to work, right? So we're creating this narrative that there is such a thing as an innocent Nazi. And I am here to tell you, no, there is not. Just because you're not the trigger man doesn't mean you're not actively benefiting from the system. And yes, of course, Larry, still shouldn't be killing kids, but I'm yet to see evidence that that's happened. Like, I'm yet to see evidence of that happening. Like, any time that accusation comes down, there's immediately a retraction, right? So I'll take a source for this claim. In fact, I just showed yesterday how Hamas recently released some of their hostages, and all of the hostages came out saying we were well treated, right? No one abused us, right? They were very gentle with us. They listened to our concerns, and they were very kind to us. Right? So this claim that Hamas is walking around killing kids, like I can show you footage of the Israeli Defense Force sniping children. We have footage of Israelis filming themselves. The Israeli Defense Force filming themselves sniping children. Right? And as they're doing it, giggling and laughing about it. Abby Martin's Gaza Fights for Freedom captured that footage. Right? I mean, Larry, what you're discussing is what I like to call the inevitability of conflict. right? Like, there is an inevitability to all of this, right? Like if you put a cup on top of a broomstick, and you put that broomstick balanced on top of a table, it is an inevitability. It's just an inevitability that cup will tumble down, right? And if your objective is to place blame, then the blame should be placed on the person who placed the cup there, not the person who knocked the cup over, right? Because the cup was placed in such a way so that it was inevitably going to fall. It was inevitable that it was going to fall. That you set a trap for someone to fall into, and it did. It went off without a hitch. And it probably happened just because somebody walked by, right? That the reverberations and the energy of their own body was just enough to cause the thing to tumble. I'm not saying it isn't inevitable. I'm saying we shouldn't use the same callous disregard as Israel does towards murdering Palestinian children. Both can be true. I mean, I understand your position, Larry. I think that, like, you're getting into a much more nuanced conversation. Like, it's impossible. How do you fight back? Like, how do you fight back without, like everything is going to go down this way as so long as the war continues. And I just feel like this talking point is something of a derailment. Like, it's us dealing with the unfortunate reality of what war is, but we're just viewing it, right? We're just looking at it. We're not really experiencing it. And children getting caught in the crossfire is, of course, horrible, no matter who, because children have no idea what's going on. They're just children, right? They just exist, and they're just kids, and there they are, and they don't know anything about anything, and they don't know what's happening. And of course, they're going to side with the people who feed them, right? Like, of course, they're going to be on the side of the person who is teaching them, right? That's just the truth of how it is to be alive in the world. And of course, it's deeply unfortunate when any child is killed anywhere at any moment. But who's putting the cup on the broomstick? Right? It's not the Palestinians. It's not Hamas. Not by a wide margin. But I don't like the shoulder shrug, because that's exactly what Israel does when hospitals blow up. No, when hospitals blow up, Israel has a parade and throws a celebration, right? And people get into the streets and say, "Ha, hooray! We killed those Palestinians and their children." Right? That's what they do. That's what they do. You can say armed settlers are combatants while also saying kids dying is bad. But here's the thing, right, is that I feel like you're the one bringing it up. Like, that's the truth. So I feel like you are the one that's dealing with that. Like, I'm having this conversation here, and you're deciding to talk about kids. And, like, of course, if you want to have that conversation, we can have that conversation, but that's not the war. Like, that's not the scale of the war. That's not the position of the situation. That's discussing the nature of the war itself. And my statement on that is, well, the people who bear the responsibility are the people who are maintaining the war. And the people who are maintaining the war are the people who have the power. And the people who have the power are the people who can shut off the power, right? Which is the Israelis, which is the Zionists, which is the Americans. I'm just saying it shouldn't be minimized, but it was a non sequitur. I said it in the context of slave rebellions. Like, if Hamas was going out of its way to kill kids, like if it was releasing statements saying we are going to murder the children the way the IDF does. Like if it was going out of its way to say that stuff, then yeah, I would have more to say about it. But they don't. Kids are just caught in the crossfire as an inevitability of the system that's held up. Frant, you said much earlier, and I think this is your first comment here, Frant, so I want to answer this. I hope you're still here. Have you taken the political compass test? If you did, what and where did you land? It's been a long time since I've taken that political compass test, because I don't really believe in them. I think you end up with the result that you want to end up with. Like, I think that political compass tests are more or less just confirmation bias tests. I don't think that you actually end up with a real answer. That you end up more or less where you think you ought to. Like, I don't think anybody ends up with those tests and goes, oh, goodness me, I can't, oh, well, this says that I'm, right? Like, and I just, they just don't mean as much as I think people think they should. I consider myself a communist, right? I consider myself, annoyingly, I like to say that I'm a secular theist, right? I consider myself a person who fundamentally cares about everyone having access to food and shelter. Fundamentally. That's the fundamental, like, linchpin position that that's the hill that I will die on. That everyone should have access to food and shelter, and it should be free. It should be completely free. You should be able to walk into a grocery store, load up your grocery cart, and walk out the door. We shouldn't even have cashiers. We should be only keeping track of how much food is there. Like, the only reason to count it is just to make sure you have enough. But the idea that we should charge people, that there should be a financial monetary system even attached to food and shelter, right? I think that these are abominations that should be purged from the society completely. That food and shelter should be made completely 100% available to everybody, 100% of the time, no excuses, never, full stop, never. Like, and I don't care. Like, I don't care. Whatever your excuse is, and whatever your defense of starving people is, and whatever your defense of wage slavery is, I don't care. Like, I simply don't care. And chances are good that you're wrong. Like, we should live in a society where food and shelter are completely free and completely available for every single person 100% of the time. And any argument against that, in my mind, is just excuse making or just straight exploitation. So there's your political compass, right? Forget your little names and your little stuff, right? Like, you wanna know what my political position is? Everyone should have food and shelter. No excuses ever. It's perfectly possible to do. We just don't want to. Heltos, it's good to see you. Resist colonizers, good to see you guys. Peaceful Palestinian protesters received active gunfire in 2018. What are they to do? Yeah, what are they to do? Resist colonizers, it was unspeakable barbarity. We can't talk about specifics because there's no specific evidence. Yeah, of course. They don't need evidence. That's the thing that's so funny about that. Like, they don't actually need evidence. They're just doing what they want. Like, I'm more or less of the opinion that the empire is just going to continue the genocide until at least the Gaza Strip has been cleared out, because they see that the West is starting to turn against Israel in terms of popular opinion. Right? They see that the popular opinion, like, they look at the polls, they understand. They see that the younger you are, the more against Israel you are. They see that, right? And so now I think that is leading them to ramp up the genocide, so that when the younger generation finally comes into a position where it actually has enough power to actually influence public policy in any meaningful way, they'll just be able to say, there's nobody here anymore. That was so long ago, right? Within your lifetime, but whatever, so long ago. And nobody's there anymore. So what? We don't need another two-state solution. What are you talking about, right? Nah, well, I think that's more or less what they're attempting to do, and that's why everything seems so frantic right now for them. That's why they don't really need to make excuses, and they're not trying to make excuses anymore, right? They're not really trying to do false flags, and they're not really trying to do any of this kind of stuff. And all their propaganda is so phony, and everything's just so ham-handed and hacky now, because they want to purge that place. They want to cleanse it. They want to make sure that nobody is there anymore, right? So they're going to shut off the water. They're going to shut off the electricity. They're going to shut off the food. They're going to shut off everything. They're going to make sure that nobody can actually survive there, and then they're going to start carpet bombing it. And now they're even starting to send in ground troops, which that's really rare. That's the new development that has me convinced that their goal is to just completely purge the place. That now they're going to go block by block and room by room and just start executing people in the streets. Just steadily, systematically exterminate these people, right? And we're just going to watch them do it. We literally have like a Starlink satellite over top watching it happen, right? As they just systematically just cleanse the place, just sweep through. And the fervor and the firmament that exists within Israel and amongst the Zionists is so high and is at such a fever pitch that they're actually going to start accepting Israeli losses. Something that hasn't been palatable for the Israelis for a long time. That the genocide is fine amongst the Zionists as long as no Zionists die, right? So, but now they're willing to see some casualties. And so they're going to really ramp this, and they are. I shouldn't say going, like it's happening now. They are ramping the genocide up, and they're just going to begin the cleansing, right? Yeah, I think Larry's nailing it. We gave advance warning to evacuate before we started shooting on sight. We are the most moral army in the world. Yeah, that's exactly right, Larry. That's exactly right, dude. You just nailed the shit out of it right there. Yeah, Israel brags about how their targeting system has surgical precision, yet they kill indiscriminately. Yep. Because they want to. Because the goal is to cleanse that place completely. And they're going to do it. Like that's the other side of this, guys. Like that's the dark truth. That's the horrible, horrific reality of all of it, is that they will do it. Right? We're going to watch them do it. There will be a moment, and the big moment for us Westerners, right? The big moment for us, in terms of the psychic damage that we will take for the horror that we have inflicted, will be the moment that Google Maps takes the Gaza Strip line and just deletes it. That'll be what happens to us, right? That'll be what happens to us. Is that we'll be sitting here and we'll look at Google Maps and there'll be a little line indicating the Gaza Strip, and then one day that'll become a dotted line, and then one day that line will be gone, and the word Gaza Strip will simply be removed from Google Maps, and it'll just become a Wikipedia page that'll just fade out, right? That's what's going to happen. That will be our experience of it, and then the whole conversation will just become about the West Bank, and very steadily the same thing will happen, right? Until eventually it's just Israel. And there's no real serious conversations. Like, the West Bank will just become integrated into the larger Israel project. Like, there's no specific line drawn around an Indian reserve or a First Nations reserve, right, in North America. Like, there's no line. So this is a special location, right? If you zoom in, you can see that it's labeled as such, but it's not like a border, right? It'll be the same, and that's basically what we are going to expect to see, right? As they begin this systemic cleansing, and what's so wild about this time that the West has done it, right, is that now we're filming it for posterity. Right? That the Israeli military is itself filming it for posterity. That the footage that we have from World War II and from the ethnic cleansing that happened during World War II, we've got some footage, right? We've got some pictures, we've got some stuff, but it's fairly limited, right? This one's getting documented. Like, this is being documented, not just by documentarians, but by the Israeli military itself. Yeah, They're just keeping solid records. But now we have, like, every single soldier has a camera. There are drones with cameras. We have satellites in the skies. Everything's getting completely 100% documented. And we're just watching humanity do a genocide and an ethnic cleansing on YouTube, basically. In a YouTube video. Like, it's becoming very, very clear and very, very obvious that this is the case. And we're just watching it happen and watching it unfold. And it's no longer a fairy tale storybook, right? It's no longer like George Washington, right? It's no longer like a few generations back. It's now. It's here. It's what we're watching. It's our money. It's our tax dollars. It's what we are doing. It's what we are participating in. Stop going to work. Just stop. Like, stop paying taxes. Just stop. Like, people say, well, don't you want a better job to get more money? Right? It's like, not really, because then I've got to actually pay taxes to these guys. And I'm not interested in that. Right? Like, I'm not interested in participating in this nonsense. In this clear, obvious psychopath Nazi society. Not really interested in that. And Canada is completely in bed with all of this. Right? Canada is completely in bed with this. The United States is completely in bed with this. We are funding it. Like, we're funding it. We're sending weapons. We're sending arms. We're sending material. We're sending personnel. We're sending training. Right? Like, we're doing that. That's what we are. So there's so much to cherish and treasure here in the West. Halitosis says, whenever anybody brings up women and children, I automatically feel like I'm being manipulated. I mean, I think that there is just an emotional aspect to it, right? Like, it's tough. It's a tough, war is a tough thing to discuss. It's a difficult thing to discuss. There's a lot going on, and there's no winning. There's no real good guys, right? I hear a statistic that 25% of the housing had been destroyed in Gaza. I can't imagine if all those houses contained missiles. Does Israel think that Palestine still has thousands of munitions? That's housing for 500,000 people. I bet the BlackRock people are just salivating buying up that land. Yeah. Yeah. Larry writes, I never really thought about how that even after we've had all of our surplus value extracted, they tax us. Yep. and then the best is that the people who do the most extracting, right, who end up with the most money, pay the least amount of tax. Right? So who ends up with the tax burden? The people who do the work. Like, Baked Potato, hey John, I think the third pillar of the collapse of Western society is the worship of authority. Interesting. Which includes patriarchy, but it also encompasses obedience, propaganda, false consciousness. Authority. Yeah, I think you're in that. I think you're in the ballpark there, Baked Potato. I think that, like, there's something elusive about this third one, eh? Like, the first two are easy, right? The first two are very straightforward, like money and self. Yeah, like, pretty obvious. We're very selfish. We love money, right? Like, I don't think we need to have, like, I mean, we do obviously have larger discussions about that. But this third one, it's so much. There is a third one, right? There is a third one. But there's something more elusive, and it's more, and I do think that authority, because that ties in with the concept of hierarchy, right? That ties into the concept of patriarchy, right? But at the same time, you're right that it has this, like, you got to buy into obedience and propaganda, right? And the false narratives, the absurd narratives that come out. You have to render yourself intentionally stupid. You have to defer to the structure that's above you, right? And what the structure above you says is true, right? How can Israel have a vote on the UN? Yeah. Yeah, right? Like, what are you talking about? Like Russia steps foot into Ukraine, and oh my God, it's the end of, oh my, wow, we gotta get, what are these guys, like, how are they, oh my God. Israel literally has an open air prison where it's committing a genocide on tape, like in video. Fucking nothing. To build on that, the defense to authority in that there are natural hierarchies. Yeah, some authorities are good. Doctors, vanguards, KGB. But your wider point is true. Like a person who has done the work, like a PhD scholar, climate change scientist, has the authority to speak on an issue more so than I do, right? Just that's just true, and I don't think that makes it. So, yeah. I think worship of the status quo also kind of works. That's not too much different than the worship of the hierarchy, right? Like that what the hierarchy says is true. Anyway, it's the ultimate the ultimate might makes right. That's our worship. I don't mean intelligentsia, not that kind of authority. Yeah. Like this is exactly what I'm talking about. Like that's why this is elusive, and why I keep entertaining this conversation. Right? That I keep entertaining this conversation because I'd like to be as specific as possible, right? I'd like to be as specific as possible. And while I think there is something like authority-based, something about how you defer to the authority of a father figure, right? It is this just believing it because daddy said so. Right? I think that's the closest I've ever gotten to it. Right? That patriarchal kind of statement, the patriarchy stuff, that it's just believing what you're told because it's your parents that said so. That's the quality. That daddy says it, so it must be true, and we don't need to investigate any further. Right? Like, we don't need to investigate any further. And anybody that does investigate any further is stupid and dumb and can be dismissed because daddy said so. And full stop. And if they tell you the truth, that doesn't matter because what daddy says is what matters. Right? It's this patriarchal worship. And that contains within it, and I think you're right to bring that up, Baked Potato, that contains within it a kind of worship of authority, but it's a specific type of authority, right? It's a specific type of authority. Because others have pointed out here, yeah, Compton is right to point out that there's a type of authority that is good. There is a type of authority that we should defer to. That authority itself is not what we're talking about fundamentally. That it is closer to this patriarchal discussion. Daddy says so. And when the society stands up and says, no, Hamas bombed their own hospital, people go, Hamas bombed their own hospital because daddy said so. Right? That's what's going on. So I still think that of all the positions I'm at, I think that I'm getting closer back to patriarchy now. Because there's that sense of ignorance. That sense of ignorance that only a child can have. Right? Only a child can have. Like it's not simply being incorrect, right? It's not, I have looked at all of the evidence. Here is my PhD thesis. I have studied the issue extensively, had my paper peer-reviewed, and entered it into the annals of the knowledge base of humanity, and I have a differing dissenting opinion. That's not what's happening, right? It's purposefully idiotic. It's being a contrarian to the facts simply because dad said so. And it's this childish deferment that I think is innate in many ways to the human experience. That everybody, when they come in, defers to their parents. That your parents are the most terrifying beings in existence. They what they say is sacrosanct and sacred. That they can unleash unholy terror upon your life, right? And when they interact with others in the world, they do so with the power of the one true God. And it isn't until you grow up a little bit that you realize, oh, this guy's just a dumbass. Like, this guy's just a dummy. Like, he's just a monkey walking around doing his best. You know, let's not denigrate him. Like, let's not insult him. Right? He's just trying his best being a guy in the world. He's Al Bundy. Right? As soon as you recognize that your dad is Al Bundy, right? Then you've grown up. You're an adult now, as far as I'm concerned. Right? As soon as you see your dad and you see your mom and you go, oh, they're Al and Peggy Bundy, and he's working a job. She's doing what she's doing, right? Well, in these days, she'd be working a job too, right? They're doing what they can to pay the bills, right? They're kind of shitty at being parents, but they're exhausted, and of course they are, and they're living in this kind of malaise, right? Just trying to get through and just trying to do their best. And as soon as you get to that position, you have grown up. You're an adult now. Your opinion can be taken more seriously. Like, I know fully grown people. I know people who are my age who still treat their parents as if they are gods, right? And the counter to the god is the demon, right? That if you're still treating your parent as a supernatural figure of some kind, if you're still saying, "Oh, I'm so fucked up because of what happened when I was a kid," right? You can acknowledge that bad things happened when you were a kid, but if you're still holding on to that when you're 40, it's elevating your parents to a supernatural position, whether that be God or devil. And if you are doing that, you're not really grown up. You're not really mature. Like that to me, like we don't really have ceremonies, or we don't have places where we say you are now an adult. Adulthood now, that other societies have. Well, to me, the moment you are an adult is the moment you look at your parents and go, oh, yeah, they're just trying their best. Like, they're just trying their best. And you can say, hey, that moment when I was a kid, that sucked. I didn't enjoy that. When I think about that, it hurts me, right? But, that's different. Yeah, is it good because God commands it, or does God command it because it is good? Oh, well, Larry, asking the big questions. We got a guy on Twitch, Jackass HT. Hey, Carl. Oh, well, I'll take the compliment. Resist Colonizers says, rapper Low-Key was on Piers Morgan's show yesterday and did better than Hassan. Refused to condemn Hamas, pointing out the truth of a lack of clear info. Got Piers frustrated and got cut off for trying to read the names of journalists killed by Israel. Yeah. I also thought that, I do have to give it to Piers Morgan. I know I never thought those words would ever come out of my mouth, but he is actually talking to people who are pro-Palestine. That's not nothing, right? That's not nothing. During this period of time where there's this heightened, across Europe, if you walk down the street in the UK with a Palestinian flag, you get picked up, right? Across Europe, if you walk down the street with a Palestinian flag, they are shutting down protest across Europe, right? The protests that are happening here in Canada and across the United States and throughout the rest of the world. Well, if you do that in Europe, that shit gets shut down by the cops, right? And so in the midst of that, here's Piers Morgan actually bringing people who are pro-Palestine, if not pro-Hamas, and having real legitimate conversations with them. You know, that's not nothing. That's not nothing. I think that's that. So I think that we actually should say of Piers Morgan, and it's unbelievable to be said, but he's actually doing it. Right? He, unlike anybody else, I haven't seen anybody else do this. Who else is doing this? Who else is reaching out to YouTube people? Who else is reaching out to like Cenk Uygur? Right? Who, incidentally, I think Cenk Uygur had a really good spot on Piers Morgan too about this, and really went after Morgan in a really, really impassioned sort of way. And so it's but it's usually with that same kind of like, hey, we are, you know, Hamas is bad, you know, they did bad things, but, right? And so now here's somebody, low-key, who is like, do you condemn Hamas? Nah, brah, nah. Hassan joked that Morgan is a double agent and is secretly hardcore pro-Palestine. Well, one of the things that I have come to see and understand, and one of the things that's interesting about the far right is that when they say free speech, they mean it. They mean it. Like, that's very, very interesting to me about the far right and Nazis and that kind of ideology, is that they mean it. Like, you can say whatever you like, and we are not going to censor you. We are not going to cut you off. Right? We're not going to ban you from our subreddits. We're not going to do that. That's some whingy liberal shit right there, or some like whingy conservative shit right there. Like, we believe in free speech, and so you say what you like. We might not like it, obviously, right? But you're free to say it. And I think the reason why they are like that is because they're not threatened by speech, because they're willing to use guns. Right? But of course you can say what you like if you're willing to shoot people. And so to them, words are not weapons in the same kind of way. Like, they are weapons, but they're not the weapon. Right? No. Cotton, I mean the real far right. Like the real far right. Like the Nazis. Like the real far right. And the try it, John. Go on r/conservative. Start talking shit about Trump. Yeah, dude. Like, I'm talking about the people who like start other political parties because the Republicans are not far enough to the right. You know, that's the stuff that I'm talking about right here. Nazis, famous free speech anarchists. Like, no, this is what I mean. Like, they will allow you to say what you like, and then they'll put a bullet in your head. Like, that's what I'm driving at. Like, that to me is the reason why they are these free speech advocates that they are. Because they understand that, yeah, there's a bullet at the end of this sentence. So say what you like. Let's hear what your final words are. Yeah, as long as we maintain a monopoly on the use of force. Yeah, exactly. Say what you like as long as we have the gun. D. Clams says, honestly find it pretty strange being on the left and seeing everyone take the opposite stance as me when it comes to Israel-Palestine. Well, here the stance is that Palestine has the right to defend itself against invaders. That's the stance. In a single sentence. right? That Israel, the Zionists are obviously the invaders. It's classic colonial bullshit. Like, we've seen it over and over and over again in time. Like, it's not different. It's the British and the Americans working with the Zionists in order to colonize a land and exterminate the Aboriginal people, just like they did to the First Nations people, just like they did to the African population, right? It's not different. And the Palestinians have the right to defend themselves. And so, my feeling is, like, if that's not your position, then I don't know why you feel you have the right to call yourself a leftist, right? That if you don't think the Palestinians have the right to defend themselves, then you don't think the First Nations people had the right to defend themselves. You don't think the black Africans had the right to defend themselves. You don't think the Chinese communists had the right to defend themselves, right? You don't think the Aboriginal people of Australia had the right to defend themselves, right? You think that the white power structure, right? You think that the Western capitalist power structure can go wherever it likes, colonize whatever it wants, and that the local population, if they fight back, they're the bad guys because we're spreading this culture and they have the right to, and they're better off. They're better off for experiencing our beautiful, wonderful culture that we're spreading throughout the globe, right? So I don't know why people who call themselves on the left and then refuse to actually defend people who are being colonized, right? Like the oppressed. I don't know why people even bother calling themselves leftists. I think it's just so that they can, get chicks or something. Like there's some girl that's like, I'm a leftist. And like, yeah, babe, I too am also a leftist. Like, I think that's mainly what it is. Because like, if none of your positions are left, and you're not actually fighting for the oppressed, and you're not actually fighting for anything that any leftist has ever written about, then I don't know why you call yourself a leftist, if except to be a grifter, like for money, right? Like people like Destiny, right? Yeah, I'm a leftist. I agree with Destiny in shooting anti-racist protesters after 10 p.m. Yeah, Destiny's a liberal, right? Like his positions are slightly to the left of conservatives. Like he's like healthcare good, right? That's basically him in a nutshell. Like he's not really literate. Like it's sort of wild to me that these illiterate boobs are the ones that have taken over the consciousness, right? People who have this sort of faux intellectual presentation, but who are actually illiterate and don't actually know anything. It's pretty stunning to watch, that like, and if you want to see like, if you want to see it in live action happen in real time, like go watch Destiny having a conversation with Richard Wolff, or the debate, if you want to call it that, between Richard Wolff and Destiny. Like Destiny gets completely manhandled, like embarrassed, frankly, like just utterly embarrassed. And like, if it had have been Destiny saying, you know what, I don't know anything about this subject, and I'm gonna let a professor inform me of what that subject is, and I'm gonna learn something today. So let's have a go. Then I think, I probably would have walked away from that being like, oh yeah, okay, great. Destiny trying to learn something from somebody who knows something more than him. Perfect. Right? But there was this real moment, and I loved this moment. It was so perfect. It was just a perfect encapsulation of who Destiny is as a person, where he's obviously getting flustered and frustrated by an intelligent person, by an adult. And so he tries to mock Richard Wolff, and Richard Wolff just looks at him and says, "What is this? What is this? Is unserious. What are you doing?" And Destiny just immediately backs down and is just like, "Oh," because he gets put in his place by an adult. Like, and frankly, like I can't believe I go on these ridiculous rants about people like Vosh and Destiny and these guys. Like, these guys are extremely boring. That's my biggest condemnation of these guys. Like, I don't understand why they are popular at all. They are the most boring people. Like, they're not interesting. They don't do interesting things. They don't have interesting positions. Their conversations are not interesting. Right? They're tedious. You really have to struggle through them. You don't end up with anything good at all. The best thing that comes out of any of these discussions is a 5-second clip that they'll give you themselves. But why bother sitting down and listening to a 2-hour bicker fest between two people who don't know anything about the subject? Like, I just don't get what people actually get out of it, except that sort of tribal feeling of picking a side, you know? Yeah, the debate was like watching a child talking with a university professor, because it was, exactly. John, what do you think a Soviet partisan would do by letting someone say what they like? Well, I mean, the position of the left is usually like, you can't say what you like. Right? That there is a censorship in speech. That free speech does not extend to certain types of speech. Like, the classic example being, like, if you call out fire when there isn't a fire, right? That's not protected speech. That this idea of unprotected speech. And, like, Holocaust denial. Here in Canada, Holocaust denial is actually a crime. Like, people can go to jail for it. And so that's speech. Like, that's what. Well, I should be able to deny a Holocaust. Nah, like, nah, brah. Like, because leftists acknowledge that words are weapons, and you can weaponize language, and you can create, like, I have a very censorship-based position when it comes to the fossil fuel industry. I think that the people who spread disinformation about the fossil fuel industry should be rounded up and put in jail for it. Right? They didn't kill anybody. They didn't pull out a gun and shoot anybody. They didn't do any of that kind of stuff. But obviously what they've done is harmful. It's been societally damaging, for sure. And so, like, Shell, Exxon, BP, like, all of these guys, all of them should be rounded up and put in jail. And we should just forget where they are. Like, we should put them in Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile island. We should create a fossil fuel executive island on Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile island, and just leave them there and forget about them. Like, that's what I think we actually should do. And it's based completely on the fact that they said some things that were obviously false, knowing that they were doing it. Right? Free speech. So the position of the left is usually that there is a type of speech that is not permitted. Oh yeah, no, I'm not saying free speech is a useful thing. I'm just saying that it is what it is. Like, I'm not defending the concept. I'm just saying that is what it is. How is knowing fighting words and just disallowing them somehow an issue, as opposed to saying what you want and then getting executed? How is knowing fighting words and just disallowing them somehow an issue, as opposed to saying what you want and then getting it? Yeah. Like, why is that funny? Like, why? Why does that exist? Like, that's an excellent question. Like, if you know that there is a type, Nazis aren't proponents of free speech. They might just understand fighting words like leftists do. Okay. And they just want to use them, right? Is that what you're saying? They just want to use them? Like, they just want the fight? Like, they want the fighting words? They like the terror? Like, I understand that, like, language is a weapon. You can weaponize words. For sure you can. Right? Like, words can inspire wars. Words can inspire people to do all kinds of heinous acts. And there are definitely words that exist within our society that, like, the N-word is the big one, right? The N-word is literally a slave word. You call someone the N-word, and you are putting them in a position of slavery. You are saying to them that you are a slave. You are a subhuman. You are beneath me, right? That's why it's considered this real curse word, right? That's why it's considered this real dark thing to say to somebody, because you are, like, you're not just insulting them, right? Like, you're not just insulting them. You're not saying that they are of a bad quality, right? You're not saying, like, I hope something bad happens to you. You're not saying like you're dumb or something like this. I just think you're giving the right undue credit. Let's be fair. They burned books. I mean, come on, bro. Yeah, that's fair. No, that's a fair point to say. Like, it is a fair... but I think you're misunderstanding my statement, Content. Like, it's not undue credit. Like, I'm not trying to credit them with this. Like, it's just how they act. Like, they will allow these people to say what they say, right? For posterity, and they'll film it, and they'll put it in front of you, and then they'll burn some books. Like, it's how they act. It's what they do. It's not credit. Like, I'm not trying to say that's why they're good. It's just what they do. So I think that's where we're having a bit of a misunderstanding, right? Like, I'm not trying to say, wow, it's interesting that the right is so good on this particular issue. It's just, it's interesting that they will literally film people saying anything they like as they burn these books in front of them. It's an interesting phenomenon. Like, we'll literally hear the last words of the trans person, write it down for posterity, keep it in the archives, and then hang them. It's an interesting behavioral pattern. And I think it ties into, like, that sense of righteousness that they have about their position, that they believe that they are righteous in what they do. And so they are of the belief that writing this stuff down and keeping it for posterity and listening to what these people have to say will somehow lend them credibility through time. To be fair, preemptively preventing fighting words is just maybe a bit more fair than going straight to killing people for their opinions. Yeah, I mean, like... I'd let landlords have their last words. Yeah, the N-word is really the thing to talk about, because that's the interesting word, right? It's the word that they all want to say. It's really what the right-wing, the far-right free speech conversation is actually about. They all just want to say it, right? They want to say the N-word. They don't like that they've been disallowed. They don't like that it's very clearly there's this hard line where no one's allowed to actually say this word. The white population has been forbidden, right? And moreover, the majority of the white population agrees with it. That this is actually a forbidden word. Like, this is a real curse word, right? The N-word is a real curse word. It's not like fuck or shit or damn or any of that kind of stuff that maybe used to be cursed words, but now who gives a shit at all, right? Like, the N-word is a real curse word that carries real power and real strength, and if you say that word, it becomes a major focal point and a major issue. Even the utterance of it needs to be so delicately done. And and it is because it is a slave word. It's not condemning someone's character, it's condemning their very existence. And saying that by your very existence you are an inferior subhuman who should serve a superior race. Like, it's a very, very, very bleak and dark word. Right? It's a very bleak and dark word. Yeah, you can say the N-word, but if you get your teeth kicked in, But I actually think... I don't know that that's true. I think that there are places, and I should look more into this before I say this, but if you do walk around just liberally using the N-word in an offensive way, like to get your teeth kicked in, I do think it is a crime. Like, you can't just do it. Like, you can't. Like, it's a serious, people take it seriously. It's not a, and they should. Like, and they should. Like it's a remnant of slavery. And if a society were to suddenly start using that word again, it would be a significant and serious regression. That's why all of these comedians that are coming out, there's this rash of comedians now coming out because of Joe Rogan's stuff down in Texas. He's opened up this nightclub, and so there's this new rash of comedians, and it's really, really, really obvious that they all want to say the N-word. Like, it's so clear. Like, Theo Von is sort of like the tip of the spear on that. He's always flirting with it and always flinging it around. But even guys even comedians like Louis C.K. Like, Louis C.K. built that word into his act several times, right? And he was delicate with it. I think he got away with it, right? So that he had built up enough credibility throughout his act so that when the word was used, it was understood that he was on the side of the people it would offend, right? So he had done it expertly. But he still is doing it. You know, he's working so hard to get this into his act, and he's working so hard to build it in. So it's very interesting. And I think that it is like an icon, like there's like this iconic achievement. There's a word in the language you cannot say, and I think for comedians that's very enticing. But it's very clear that it's attracted a type of person who's like, oh, if I get into comedy, then I can say it, you know? And I don't think that they're coming at it in good faith. Language is a weapon if people believe them. If people want to listen to a racist, it's because they are racist themselves. I prefer an enemy that is clearly visible than one that lurks in the shadows. Yeah, I mean, the classic conservative liberal argument, right? Who's better, a liberal or a conservative? Resist colonizers. Vosh got rich and hasn't left the USA. Is he just uninterested in the world, or is he not allowed to, according to his probation officer? Again, though, just like boring. Like, he's just a boring person. Like, I don't know why people care about him. His positions are boring. Like, they're pretty boilerplate, just democratic talking points for the most part, right? Like that. So it's like watching him is just like watching a young male Hillary Clinton. You know, like there's not much going on there. Okay. Let's turn towards some Canadian news. We are here at the Canadian Commie. Good opportunity to say like, share, subscribe, hit those bells, hit the whistles, do all the stuff. As expected, charges dismissed against the Freedom Convoy protester who had bank accounts frozen. An Ottawa judge has dismissed all charges against a Freedom Convoy protester whose bank accounts were frozen by the Liberal government. According to a press release by the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms, Evan Blackman had criminal code mischief and obstruction of police charges dismissed by the court after police failed to remember key details about the arrest and provided scant evidence to substantiate the charges. My client and I are thrilled with this outcome, said JCCF lawyer Chris Fleury. After almost 20 months, Mr. Blackman can finally put this matter behind him. The evidence submitted to the court included a 14-minute drone video and one officer's testimony. In the video, the JCCF reports that Blackman can be seen in a group of protesters facing off with the police. Footage suggests that Blackman was trying to de-escalate the situation by preventing the protesters from engaging with the police any further and blocking others from confronting police. Additionally, the video provided by the police shows Blackman getting on his knees and taking off his hat to sing the national anthem, O Canada. Despite Blackman's actions, he was arrested February 18th, 2022, after the federal government declared the protest illegal and invoked the Emergencies Act to quash the peaceful demonstrators who opposed the vaccine mandates. Upon release, Blackman's bank account had been ordered frozen as a result of the Trudeau government's decision to employ emergency powers. Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland announced at the time that the act would grant financial institutions the authority to freeze the bank accounts of protesters and cancel the insurance of truckers. Furthermore, it relied on anti-money laundering and terrorist financing regulations to go after the funds raised by the Freedom Convoy. So I consider this to be a win for Canada. Like, for clarity, so everybody understands my position, I do not stand with the Freedom Convoy ideologically, right? But I do stand with the Freedom Convoy in regards to its right to protest. That they have the right to protest, they have the right to air their grievances and expect to have those grievances heard by the government, right? That's the reason we elect officials, to do that. And instead of doing that, these people had their bank accounts frozen. The Emergency Act was evoked. They were treated like terrorists, arrested, put on trial, and now subsequently those cases are being dismissed. This is the first, and there will be others. People like Tamara Litch, people like Pat King, will have these cases dismissed because the position of the government is groundless. They have no grounds by which to actually incarcerate these people, because what they did was unwarranted, unnecessary, and wrong. Canadian citizens have the right to protest, whether or not you like what their protest is about. That's the entire point. That's why it's a democracy. Jack writes, I think there's going to be a war with Iran based on how things are going. Iran is using her proxy to cause trouble in the region. Who's Iran's proxy? Who's Iran's proxy? I mean, Iran has done a really good job at maintaining its stability during the war on terror, right? Like, if you look at Iran, like let's look at Iran. I'm very impressed with Iran, I have to say. Like, you can say what you like about the leadership of Iran, and you should, right? It's easy to critique theocrats, right? It's not hard to critique people who base their ideology on God said so, right? But there's Iran, major war in Afghanistan, including a major conflict after the United States pulled out. Iraq is basically broken into two warring tribes, with the United States acting as like corporations now. So this is just disrupted. Major war in Syria. Major disruption here, right? So you're looking at like major conflict. Pakistan is always in conflict. So you're looking at major conflicts all around Iran, and it's maintained its stability. It's maintained its stability. Iran is not a pushover. The United States is not just going to be able to roll on in, right? That's the reason why it hasn't. Like, if the United States wanted to roll on in, it would have. That usually how this works, right? Usually what the United States does is they use proxies. They fund far-right regimes in order to seize power on behalf of the West. The issue with what's going on in Iran is that the far-right is in power, right? It's militant far-right theocrats that are in power, typically the people the United States would fund, right? And moreover, the people of Iran themselves are like, yeah, there's like war everywhere. Like, there's war everywhere. The United States is trying to destroy us, very obviously. And so when the theocrats point their ire at a group that exists in Iran and cleans them up, the people of Iran are like, yeah, probably being funded by the United States. And it turns out to be true. So, like, there's a high level of militancy. It's a very tightly controlled culture, a very tightly controlled situation. There have been protests, obviously, and people are not happy about what's going on, obviously. But I'm very impressed with Iran's stability, especially given their lack of allies around them. Right? Iran's closest allies in all of this have been China and Russia. Right? So good allies to have, but far. Like, distance counts, right? But so they've managed to keep the United States at bay. And the U.S. is not going to be able to just send troops in, right? First of all, like, it would be a PR disaster, right? Like, what are you doing going into Iran? Like, what's your casus belli? What's your reason, right? And maybe the United States no longer feels like it needs a reason, which could totally be the truth. They could just be like, the Iranians, they're the terrorists. They're terrorizing our terror, and we got to go in there to spread terrorism and democracy. Heh, right? Like, they could, and a lot of Americans will probably be like, yeah, Iran is a bad place, full of Muslims, right? So, like, maybe, but I'd be very surprised. Like, I actually would be very surprised if suddenly the United States was like, we here in the United States of America believe that we got to continue stopping the spread of terrorism, and we see that the new hub of terrorism is Iran. And I mean, maybe, like Russia and China, the strategy of the United States has been that in order to weaken China and in order to weaken Russia, to go after smaller fish. Right? To go after smaller fish and to create circumstances and situations. But this situation is more in line with how the United States typically operates, right? Fund far-right organizations in order to coup governments and take power that way, right? It's more or less how they do it. They don't really get all their troops together and start an offensive. It's not really how they roll, right? It's what they did in Libya, for example. They funded far-right militants who were able to seize power that way and destroy the country doing it. So is there a credible evidence to show that's what the United States is doing in Iran? I would be surprised if they weren't trying, right? And they clearly are trying. But I think the issue that they're having is that the people who they typically would succeed in allying with are the ones that are actually in power. At any rate, I think lots of troop movements indicate the U.S. is getting ready. I mean, there's lots of U.S. troop movements going on for lots of reasons. I do think the more credible war would be some kind of offensive against Israel, right? Like, what Israel is doing right now is inflaming the Middle East. They are committing a mass genocide, carpet bombing, systemic extermination, right? And they're doing so in the heart of Muslim territory. Like, yeah, they're pissing a lot of people off. Like, they're pissing a lot of people off. And Israel will have to defend itself. Like, there is going to be an attack. Like, mark my words. I don't know who. Like, I don't know from what direction. I don't know who's going to actually do it. But it's going to happen. Because, like, it's a systemic extermination of Arabs in the heart of the Middle East. Like, they're not just going to stand by and watch it happen. All it would take is one submarine or even a speedboat loaded with explosives to take out a U.S. aircraft carrier. Like, what's interesting is I've read reports that show, like, when the invasion of Iraq happened, there was one military general who was saying stuff like that. They were doing war games about how to enter Iraq and how to be successful and how to do it swiftly and all that kind of stuff. And there was this one general who was like, well, if they loaded up speedboats and with bazookas and stuff and came up alongside of our ships and broadsided us, right, like, that would be effective. And it'd be something I would think. And yeah, we should probably think about it. And the general thought that he got back from his higher-ups was like, they're not going to do that. Like, we're just going to roll in there. Right? And it was true. Like, the Americans just rolled in there. But, like, it does sort of illustrate that if you're even remotely creative with the way that you think about how to defend against the U.S. empire will not see it coming. Because, like take this Hamas offensive that happened fairly recently, right? They had fucking hang gliders. I almost guarantee that the IDF was just like, hang gliders? What the fuck? So if you're remotely creative at all, Like, if you've got even an iota of just like, I bet we could use kites. You know, I bet we could use, if you're resourceful even a little bit, then you can put your thumb in the eye of the empire. Well, and who's Iran's proxies? Sorry, like, let's pause this conversation. I asked that before and nobody's answering me. Who's Iran's proxies? Iran is the proxy. Like, Iran's got no proxies. Who's the proxy for Iran? Like, come on. If you're going to say that Iran's got proxies and that there's Iranian proxies, who? Who are they? Who has vassalized themselves to Iran so that they are the proxy of Iran? Like, Iran is the proxy. Iran's the proxy of China and Russia, right? Like, this is how China and Russia are extending their influence into the region, right? Oh, just like militant groups within the region. Okay, sure. Like, that's reasonable. It's proxy within proxy. It's proxception. It's just proxy within proxy within proxy. It's just an unfolding proxy. And then those proxies also have proxies. And those proxies also have proxies. It's like a little Russian nesting doll of proxies. And then the final proxy, their proxy is China. So it's just a proxy that loops back on itself. It's a looping proxy. Anyone resisting colonialism, Russia, China, and Iran's proxies. No, but I think that's a fair thing to say. Like, usually people wouldn't say proxy, but like Iranian-funded militants, right? I think it's more or less what you mean, and that's, yeah, of course. Of course, Iran has militants in Syria. Of course, they've got militants in Yemen and Iraq. Like, yeah, absolutely. Like, they'd be crazy if they didn't. Like, they'd be absolutely bonkers, crazy, go nuts if there weren't Iranian troops just like chilling out over here, you know? There weren't Iranian troops just like kind of rolling into Baghdad, just being like, hey, what's going on over here in Baghdad? Yeah, cool, right? It'd just like be really bonkers if there wasn't Iranian influence happening over here, you know? Like, it's just obvious. So, like, but that's not like, because I think the thing that's got me tripped up, you know, is that usually when people use the word proxies, it's in connection to international alliances, right? It's in connection to the idea that, like, Israel is the United States' proxy. Like, it is the method by which the United States exerts influence within the region. And Iran is China and Russia's proxy in that they are the state by which those nations exert their influence into the region. Saudi Arabia historically has been a proxy for the United States, although that's starting to change. And right now, I would argue that Saudi Arabia is nobody's proxy, that they're more or less neutral / playing all sides. So, like, anybody can kind of do business with Saudi Arabia at the moment. Oh, yeah, and these militants that are supported and funded by Iran are attacking U.S. troops in the region? Oh, yeah, I suspect they are. Like, the United States is not friends to the Iranians. Like, if the United States had their way, Iran would... and Iran knows this. Like, this is the thing that I think people don't really understand about Iran at this moment, is that Iran is fully aware that if the United States had its way, it would look like Iraq. Like... it would be a destroyed, dismantled, fractured country, separated into ethnic or religious groups, isolated from one another, with essentially corporate conglomerate interests in power and control, siphoning resources out of the country. And they know it. They know that's exactly what the United States' plan is for Iran. And so if a United States trooper were to walk over the border of Iran, they'd get shot and nobody would blink an eye. It wouldn't even be an international incident. Like literally, if the United States tried to pretend it was an international incident, the entire rest of the world would be like, yeah, like, what are you talking about? So yeah, that's why there might be direct military confrontation between the United States and Iran. Like, if that happens, like that's a major military offensive, right? Like going into Iran is not, it's not going to look like Iraq, right? It's just not going to look like Iraq. They're not going to roll in, take over, take power, settle in, and become colonizers in a week, right? It's just not what it's going to look like. That the war on terror has been going on for 20 years. The Iranians are extremely aware of the intentions of the Americans. They have been preparing. They understand the stakes. They know what's happening, and they have allies. Strong, powerful allies, right? The United States will not just roll through like Iraq. And they might try. Like, they might try. And they might do significant damage. Like, they might do some significant damage. But like, you want to talk about a quagmire. You want to talk about like getting caught in a conflagration. A full-scale invasion of Iran, we'd still be talking about that 20 years from now. It would still be going on in a decade. Like, that would be a real Vietnam serious situation. And I'm not saying it's not possible. Like, I'm not sitting here being like, and that's why the United States will never do it. Because the United States is like a rabid dog, right? Like, it's just a rabid dog. It's just this foaming at the mouth demon that is absolutely perfectly fine with massacring millions and millions of people. Like, we're here to staunch the spread of communism. 100 million people dying in fire. I made up a story about how Mao killed 100 million people. Like, these guys are psychopaths. And they're deranged, delusional psychopaths. So it's perfectly possible that the United States just becomes completely foaming at the mouth, unhinged, and decides to do it. And that they make up some excuse. Just as you say. They're just like, oh my God, Billy Bob was shot on the border of Iran while he was feeding a puppy. He was feeding a puppy on the border of Iraq and Iran, and they just shot an innocent stormtrooper. That'd be the imperial propaganda. Remember Billy Bob. Billy Bob, imperial stormtrooper. He was feeding a puppy. You know? Like, he was holding a baby and feeding a puppy and giving a rose to Mother Teresa. And they shot him like a dog in the dust. We gotta go into Iran to avenge Billy Bob's name. Right? Like, that's how paper thin this shit's getting. Like, it's just, we found a little baggie. Look at the little baggie of white powder that we got. We gotta go into Iraq. They got the weapons of mass destruction. Yeah, because ultimately, if U.S. military personnel keep getting killed, then they have to respond. I mean, one would assume that the accurate response for U.S. military personnel getting killed would be to leave, to not be there, right? But that's not what's happening. Norman Finkelstein says Israel isn't above initiating a nuclear strike on Iran. Thoughts? The nuclear stuff is where things get really fucky, right? Like, it's like, I have often said that the reason why I think that a society will not engage nukes is because because you have to see, like, a true death cult. Like not just the ideology, but the full embracing of the death cult. That the usage of nuclear weaponry comes with an acknowledgement that it is a self-elimination or self-immolation. You have to know this. You have to be aware that when you are using a nuclear bomb, you are also hurting yourself, right? That there's an entire military theory of mutual self-destruction that Israel definitely knows, that they definitely are aware of, right? And so to actually see a culture in this society at this time be willing to deploy a nuclear bomb, you are looking at like a straight up Fallout 3 death cult style. We worship the atom and wish to return to him. You need to see the guy in the hood with the symbol above this, the nuke being like, we release unto you, Lord Adam, our great and powerful. And like the Zionists might be there. Like they maybe. Like it's completely possible. Like we're not privy. We're not privy to their internal conversations and what that looks like. But like from what we can see, they look fucking fanatical and absolutely insane and nuts. So like how much longer until they are in a position where they're just like the president is going and writing and like drawing the symbol on the nuclear bomb, and like there's a priest blessing whatever the Zionist priest is, an imam, I don't know. Oh wait, a rabbi. Obviously, John, a rabbi, Jesus. I mean, I guess in this case, not Jesus, but that's fine. The like a rabbi blessing a nuclear bomb and being like, and all that kind of stuff, right? And how they're like going to launch it off for the glory of Yahweh and all this. Like it. I think it's possible. Like you see what they're doing in Gaza. Like you see what they're doing in Gaza. Like it's all possible. Like these people are lunatics. They're deranged. They're Nazis with nuclear bombs. Right? And like maybe it'll just take one coked up orgy and they'll just be like, let's do it. You know? That said, because of the nature of what a nuclear, like using nuclear bombs, because of what it means, the symbolic nature of it, the first person to use a nuclear bomb is a villain, right? Anybody going to say, and it was correct to use the nuclear bomb? I mean, I know Sam Harris will. Like, that's a clear position that he still holds. But like anybody serious? Anybody seriously going to stand up and be like, yes, the using a nuclear bomb makes you the hero of the story, for sure. So the symbolic nature of it has got to not be lost. And then also, like, straight up, like, if they were to use a nuclear bomb, I think that literally everybody in the region and everybody in the world would basically just say, gloves off. Like, we no longer give a shit what happens to Israel. Like, forget about two-state solution. Right? Like, I think that that's probably what stops it more than anything. That if Israel was to suddenly say, let's nuke somebody, right? Let's nuke somebody, then it's very difficult for me to perceive how anybody would be like sympathetic to Israel, right? That it's very difficult for me to see how like suddenly all of these people within, like, you think about, there are lots of people in this region. There are lots of Arabs in this region, right? Who are actually saying two-state solution and who actually believe that and who are like, no. The path to peace is for the UN to acknowledge the Palestinian people and for there to be a two-state solution, right? And to move forward along those lines, right? If Israel used a nuke, all of those people are gone, right? Maybe they don't change their mind, but they definitely keep their mouth shut, right? Nobody is going to stand up and be talking about a two-state solution if Israel drops a nuke on someone. No one is going to be talking that way. There's not a single voice that's going to stand up anywhere even remotely close to the Middle East and still be talking about a two-state solution. And then you talk about Russia and China. Are they still going to be talking about a two-state solution? Right? Like, if Israel does that, they are condemning themselves to eternal war. And you can't win. You can't win that. That's an inevitable loss for Israel. And so it's beyond, like, forget about the physical aspect of dropping nuclear radiation in an enclosed atmosphere. Like, forget about the self-immolation that comes along with mutual self-destruction of an exchange of nuclear bombs, right? Forget about any of that. Politically speaking, like, on the international stage, they lose in a way that I can't even begin to articulate and comprehend. Like, no one will come to bat for Israel when they are invaded. That it will raise a cry up from the imperial core. There's already a movement that's about defunding Israel. It already exists, right? The BDS movement. Boycott, divest, sanction, right? Well, if Israel suddenly nukes someone, you think those voices are going to get quieter? You think they're going to get more silent? Right? Like, and what happens if those voices are successful? Right? After a nuclear bomb is dropped. Who comes to save Israel? Who comes to save Israel? Kevin, I sent you that link, my man. I'll resend it to you after this stream, okay? I thought I sent it to you, my man. Check your email. Check your Patreon. Check something. I'm sure that I sent it to you. So like, what I'm trying to drive towards is, like, the level of madness that it would actually require. Not just the environmental damage for your own self. Not just the threat of receiving a nuclear exchange in return. Right? So the self-immolation that comes with that. But also becoming the villain of the world, having literally everyone regard you as the villain of the world, losing every single ally you have, and also threatening to lose power within the imperial core itself. And in exchange, you gain what? What exactly does Israel actually gain from doing this? The sense of accomplishment of having done it? The sense that it's good that we did it? The aha moment of, like, haha, we got them. What else? So, like, it's beyond a conversation of, like, reason. Like, you want to say things like cooler heads will prevail, but it's not just cooler heads. It's like, are these people, like, do these people actually think they have been possessed by Allah or Yahweh, and that Yahweh is telling them to drop the nuke, and that Yahweh will protect us from the consequences of our actions? Like that's where I think that they would need to be in order to actually get there. Because they have to be within the delusional space of actually believing that there will be no consequences for this. And that what they're doing is righteous and true and pure and innocent and holy and all of those sorts of things. That this is what God himself wants us to do. And God will reward us for our actions. You know? Are they there? Is that what we're actually seeing? I don't think so. Like, I think that the leadership in Israel is much more cynical than that. That I think that they're willing to use religious language and religious iconography and religious kind of stuff, but I think that they know that they are doing it in order to maintain power. Like, I think that they know what they're doing in that regard. I would need to see some, like, true believer shit. Like, some real, true believer shit before I started buying into the idea that Israel's going to drop a nuke. Because they lose everything for doing so, and they gain very little. Israel literally threatening the head of the UN now. That's fun. That's fun. What are you saying? Omnicidal tendencies. The U.S. is just going to steamroll it and leave it to fester. They already did it to the Iranian Navy in the 80s with Operation Praying Mantis when they screwed with the gas price. Iranian Navy never really did recover either. Yeah, I mean, this isn't the 80s. You know? It's not 1982. You know, we're like almost 50 years out, and like the Iranians are not like walking around with like post-Soviet gear. You know, like I think the Iranians have been preparing and are well prepared. Like I don't think that they will be able to like defeat the empire and throw them off and cast them into the sea, right? Like, but I don't think it'll be this idea like, well, we're gonna go in there and liberate them and we'll be done in a week. Heh. Like, nah, brah. Lots of Israelis have dual citizenship. Things get too bad there, people will leave. Yeah, I mean, the United States is a safe haven for fascists since its inception, so why not? Oh, I thought you meant YouTube? I'll check, thank you. I'm confused. If that nuke sets off, the blame is going to begin, and they'll blame China. Well, I mean, we will, but the rest of the world will see through it. Military obesity rates soar, compounding recruitment challenges. Oh, yeah, that's an ongoing narrative in the United States. Well, let's just quickly turn back to Canadian politics. This is the Canadian commie, after all. Worried about Pierre Poilievre, Justin Trudeau's team economy tries to fight back. I have to be seen to be believed, Queen Elizabeth II once reportedly said, and so it has become for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's front bench. Battered by polls suggesting Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is viewed by a growing number of Canadians as best suited to manage the economy, and internal grousing over the Liberals' failure to connect on that key issue, a trio of Liberal cabinet ministers are hosting weekly news conferences to make the case to Canadians that they have the matter in hand. They're nicknamed Team Economy, and at least their fifth such event took place Tuesday, with Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland, Industry Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne, and Treasury Board President Anita Anand trumpeting the government's accomplishments, making more announcements and hinting on what's coming next. Here in Canada, literally 60% of the society are $200 away from insolvency. This is a failed state. One of the things we're trying to do today is cut through the rhetoric, Freeland said. For Freeland, Tuesday's message was about the coming fall economic statement, a mini budget set to drop within weeks that she said Tuesday will have three prongs. Getting more homes built faster. Not going to happen. The system of capital is incapable of doing so. Helping ease the affordability crisis facing Canadians. Again, confronting the system of capital, which they won't do. And doing those things, here it is, in a fiscally responsible way. So them just admitting that we're not actually going to do those things because we have to abide by the system of capital. What we're going to do is ask the system of capital very nicely. That's what we're going to do. We're going to go say, hey. From there, she threw to Anand, who was able to provide the latest numbers for the government's bottom line, after tabling a suite of financial documents in Parliament. Anand pointed out that the deficit for the 2023 fiscal year is coming in at $35.3 billion, down from the $52.8 billion deficit projected in the 2022 budget, which she called great news. Deficits are bad for billionaires. That's the truth. That if the government is running a deficit, it means that the government is doing something that the billionaires want to do. Right? That if the government steps in and creates a deficit, they're creating a surplus somewhere else. And that's a surplus that could be in the bank account of a billionaire. That's how this actually works. And so when they say, oh, the government deficit is actually less, it means that they gave $20 billion to billionaires. That's what that actually means. In 2023, federal budget had already projected a lower deficit for the year at $43 billion. Anand didn't go too deep into the why of the reduced deficit numbers, but the document offered the explanation. The end of COVID-19 related payments to people, right, so we stopped actually increasing economic activity, and businesses brought government spending down, and government revenues, which come from taxes, went up 8.4%. in 2023. So we raised taxes on everybody and stopped actually providing a service to them for that. Right? So that we could give that money to who? Galen Weston and David Thompson. That's who. And that's called affordability. Notable in the documents tabled was the impact of GST rebates, an effort the government styled as a grocery rebate in the last budget. All told, the rebates and lower consumer spending overall meant the government made about $200 million less off the GST. So even their own system of taxation is fucking up because they're so incompetent and stupid. How much Canadians pay for certain things and how much they know about that issue was Champagne's focus on Tuesday as he announced additional funding to an existing program that supports research on consumer issues, including grocery prices, so Canadians can be more aware of issues like shrinkflation. So they're taking money and giving it to programs in order to propagandize you about things they want you to know, but they can't just give you money. We need as much more vibrant consumer advocacy culture in this country to highlight the type of things that frustrate Canadians and to let them know that we're definitely taking care of those things. Oh, I'm fighting my little pug right here. He's definitely feeling scrappy, I tell you. Oh, no barking, though. You don't get to bark. What's been frustrating Liberals for months is watching Poilievre's poll numbers rise. Yeah, because these Liberals are fucking stupid as shit. Like, dumbasses. And Nazis. Under Poilievre, the Conservatives have jettisoned talking about anything but the economy. Yeah, it's the economy, stupid, right? Like, for God's sakes, I'm getting a roommate. I'm getting a roommate. I work a full-time job and I'm getting a roommate. Fuck your economy. If you think this is a success, you're a dim-witted moron. Just an absolute fool who I can easily and roundly ignore. You're just a child person who needs to just fucking grow up. Straight up. I'm sorry that you had your balls coddled by your government. My government is actively betraying me. So. And in the most recent round of polling by Abacus data, 43% of those polled thought Poilievre was better than Trudeau at managing it. I mean, an empty paper bag would be better than Trudeau. An empty paper bag would be better than literally any capitalist at this point. All three ministers took shot at the opposition Tuesday, with Anand pointing to the financial results she unveiled as undercutting her assertions about the Liberals wrecking the economy. Look, we pointed at how much money the billionaires made. Look, the billionaires made a bunch of money, everybody. Everybody. The billionaires. They made a ton of money. The economy's going great. Through these documents, Canadians will see that, unlike the opposition, our government believes in investing in Canadians. I mean, the billionaires technically are Canadians, time after time, because we need to build a stronger economy for billionaires and a stronger country for billionaires, she said. Setting up a contrast between the government and the opposition is clearly part of the goal of the weekly news conferences, said Elliot Hughes, a former advisor to Liberal finance and defense ministers who is now a senior associate at Summa Strategies. It's a choice to front a team of liberals to juxtapose against Polyev himself. With the idea his, but a party of one, Hughes said. Yes, the traditionally successful strategy of putting a whole bunch of people that nobody knows in front of one iconic figure. Always effective. That contrast is something that they're wanting to showcase, and then likely over time expose in some way. But there are pros and cons to the effort, Hughes pointed out. Con being, it never has worked in the history of mankind. While it is good to be able to focus ministerial offices and departments on the need to have announcements to make on a weekly basis, there's also the risk that fatigue sets in, and it becomes a scramble just to find something to say. Also, we don't believe you. Like, we think you're frauds and liars who like, salute Nazis in Parliament. Like, lower my rent. Like, lower my rent. Like it's not, this isn't difficult, right? This isn't difficult. Fussing with some numbers, talking about a deficit, pointing at a billionaire and saying, look how much money he's making, right? Cut my rent. This is real straightforward shit. Average rent in the city of Toronto is $2,000 a month. Stand up, say we're cutting rent, and if you don't cut the rent, we put you in jail, or shut your fucking mouths. Like, this is real straightforward shit, you guys. Like, this is real straightforward stuff. And we know why the liberals won't do it. We know why they won't. Because they work for the billionaire class. They work for the capitalists. And Polyev is doing a really good job of roasting these liberals, because it's easy to do, because they're such overt and obvious craven frauds and literal Nazi collaborators and sympathizers. But he's going to come in and do fuck all. He's going to come in and basically point at the billionaire and say, hey, everybody, look at how well the billionaire's doing. Like, that's what's going to happen. With the coming election that's going to be driven by personalities and voters' likes and dislikes of party leaders, certainly not the ability to pay our rent, you fucking dumb cucks, having ministers and not Trudeau making the pronouncements could be a weakness. If you don't have a good tie between the Prime Minister and the leader of the party and the most important issue for voters, that could be a challenge down the road, he said. You know how you win voters? Helping them. Help them. Help voters. Help them. Right? If a liberal literally attempted to help me at all with anything ever, like, I think the closest they got is that in the midst of the crisis, they passed a piece of legislation, the CERB, right, in order to actually deal with that crisis. Of course, it helped them as well, because they were worried about their own personal health. But as soon as they shored that up, what did they do? They destroyed the program. Why? Because they don't want to put in things like a basic income. They don't want to actually support the proletariat. They don't want to actually create systemic change in the society. They don't want to actually build anything. Like, that was what was so wild about the CERB in the here in Canada, is that in literally a week, they put a basic income in everybody's bank accounts. They did it like that. It was instant, right? So it's perfectly possible. And what did it do? Well, it created economic growth. It actually increased the economy. Why? Because people had money to spend. Like, and now what's happening? The billionaire has money, so it's all good. Like the problem with the CERB is that it helped people, and it didn't help billionaires. That was the problem, and it really, really highlights the central antagonism that exists within the society. That if it wasn't for these worthless billionaires, if it wasn't for these worthless capitalists, the passage of the CERB would be widely regarded as very successful and useful. That everybody in the society would have been like, this is just what we should have. We should just have this, right? This gives us access to food and shelter, and this is completely fine, right? We can take this and we can go get food, we can go get shelter, we can distribute this amongst ourselves, right? And then we could go to work, get a little bit more in order to have some fun and have some luxuries and do some stuff. And man, maybe we should chill out. Maybe we should do less work. Maybe we should involve in artistic pursuits. Maybe we should do these sorts of things. You know what I mean? But instead of that, oh, well, the billionaire didn't like it. We have a guy with a dumb name saying lazy people hate capitalism. Yeah, dumb people say dumb things. That's all. Like, I work a full-time job, and then I also do this. But yeah, I'm the lazy one. Certainly not the capitalist class that doesn't do any work whatsoever, right? That basically just sit on their ass. Like, a guy like Elon Musk gets to pretend like he's working his ass off, but we all know that he has like an Elden Ring account, and like he showed us all his shitty build. Like, this embarrassing, ridiculous statement gets said by people who are so clueless and detached from reality that they don't know what's even going on in front of them. They're just like 14-year-olds. Yeah, and people are being made to pay the CERB back. It's just fucking embarrassing. And extra, I actually think that the people who are being made to pay the CERB back have a serious case, like a serious court case, that they could actually go and, because they were told they wouldn't have to do that. Like, I imagine that there are a lot of people, and the case that they could make is like, we were told that this was going to help us, and that we weren't going to be told to pay this back, and if I had have known I was going to have to pay this back, I wouldn't have taken it. Right? So I think that there's a pretty serious fraud case that people could launch against the government. Did you see Jason Unruhe just got a YouTube suspension for misinformation for talking about Israel? Yeah, the purges are coming, my man. That's why you should get in the Discord. Right? Put $1 on the table, send it to my Patreon. Right? Get into the Discord so that when I am purged, and so that when the purges happen, you'll know where to find me. The purges are coming. Like, it's very serious what's going to happen. And we're seeing it steadily, slowly. Like, right now, it's just this little trickle. It's just this little pick. Just this little, like, doink, one here, one there, right? One here, just like a doink, 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 doink. Right, just little people getting like an NDPer gets kicked out of the caucus, right? That just doink, one person gone, a YouTuber over here, boink, right? Just a little pick, and very soon, there's just going to be a straight up just, and all that'll be left are the fascists. It's 100% coming. So please consider donating to the Patreon. If you're only donating $1, maybe make it $2. If you're only donating $2, maybe make it $3. More importantly than anything else, though, tell people I exist. Inform people of my existence. Let people know where to find people who are actually trying to have these conversations seriously. Yeah, Katie Halper got booted from Rising. Like, there are purges coming. They are on the horizon. It is very clear that it's going to happen. And it is only a matter of time until this channel goes. And when this channel goes, when they stoop so low to pick this scab, you'll know how serious things have gotten. Yeah, the purges have been ongoing on the right while the left cheered and didn't understand how the pendulum works. I tend to agree with you, the wizard. Like, I tend to agree with you. That you can see that. I just was discussing the Freedom Convoy, right? Like, you can see that with the Freedom Convoy. How the society kind of cheered it on against the Freedom Convoy without recognizing that if that's what they're going to do to them, that's what they're going to do to us. That's 100% how this is going to work. That they're going to go, they went after the Freedom Convoy, they'll go after us in the same way. Only the next time they'll be better organized and they'll do it faster. Right? They'll do it faster. And you can already see it happening across Europe. If you stand up and wave a Palestinian flag in a European country, you go to jail. Right? If you do that in the UK, you go to jail. Yeah. as an anarchist, I don't know that I understand your comment fully, the wizard. For clarity, and I always have to be clear because I don't know what people's positions are on any of this stuff, I do not ideologically support what the Freedom Convoy stood for. I support the Freedom Convoy's right to protest. That's what I fight for. That whether or not you agree with them or like them, they are still citizens and they still have the right to protest. And what happened to them was illegitimate. That the government did not have the right to do what it did. Yeah. Speaking of the UK, right? Speaking of the UK, number of children living in extreme poverty nearly triples in 5 years. This is the plan for the death cult for all of us. This is their goal for all of us. Oh, for goodness sakes. No wonder people hate this shit. Go away. The number of children living in extreme poverty has nearly tripled in the past 5 years, according to a new report that lays bare the impact of the cost of living crisis on hard-hit families. A soaring number of households are skipping meals to save money, borrowing from relatives, and turning to food banks as they struggle to meet their most basic needs, including staying warm and dry, clean and fed. The report by the Joseph Rowntree Foundation shows that a total of 3.8 million people experienced destitution last year, a 61% increase from 2019. The number of children was 1.04 million, up from 362,000 in 2017. Yeah, but people who are against capitalism are just lazy, right? These people are just lazy. They just need to go get jobs, right? Campaigners and politicians lambasted the findings, with Action for Children calling the crisis a disgrace that shames us all. Tony Lloyd MP, a member of the all-party parliamentary group on poverty, said the scale of the problem is a scandal. Every political party should be saying, we are going to fix this because it is about having a basic standard of decency in our society. Yeah, but capitalists don't have a basic standard of decency, right? Capitalists say dumb things like, oh, people are just lazy, while impoverishing them directly. No child should have to suffer from a lack of warmth, to live in a home that is not dry, or to not be fed properly. In Britain, the 5th richest country in the world, these should be staples of our society. These are staples of your society. Poverty is a staple of your society because your society is capitalist. Liz Kendall, Labour's shadow work and pensions secretary, said the report was a damning indictment of this conservative government. The former Children's Commissioner for England, Anne Longfield, warned that there must be an urgent laser-like focus from within government to tackle child poverty, so we can consign childhood destitution to the history books and Dickensian novels where it belongs. A spokesperson for the government said that its number one priority was driving down inflation. We are providing support worth an average of £3,300 per household, with including raising benefits by over 10% this year and increasing the national living wage again, they added. Right, but all of your theories are based around the idea that billionaires should exist, so all that money just funnels back up towards them. According to the survey, food was the main thing that the poorest families couldn't afford. So I'll say that again. According to the survey, food was the main thing that the poorest families couldn't afford. Just lazy people. They just need to get better jobs. With nearly 2/3 of destitute households reporting that they were going hungry. Single working age adults were the most likely to live in destitution. Single working age adults were the most likely to be living in destitution, with single parents with children the second worst affected. One mother told researchers that she could only eat one meal a day, while another said she had not done any washing for 2 weeks because she couldn't afford washing powder. Just lazy people, right? They just need to get better jobs. Rising costs at the supermarket were also affecting families. Monira, a working mom of 2 who turned to a local food bank for help, said, I constantly face the dilemma of having to choose between giving my family a healthy and balanced diet and a healthy, social, and active life. Our grocery shopping cost has almost doubled. So did our bills. Yet our salaries have not followed. So I have no choice but to seek help. London has replaced the Northeast as the worst hit region, analysts found. Newham Council had the highest level of extreme poverty in the country, with Manchester and Middlesbrough coming second and third respectively. For the first time in the 2022 study, destitution was broken down by ethnicity, with analysis finding that the rate of destitution among black respondents was 3 times higher than their population share, because black people are naturally lazy. That's what that is, right? The report, the fourth in a series of destitution in the UK studies published regularly in recent years, put the rise down to a combination of very low incomes, the rising cost of living, and high levels of debt. But it also said that the society security system is failing to protect people from destitution, with almost 3/4, 72% of those who were destitute last year being in receipt of benefits. The report combined an analysis of data with surveys of nearly 4,000 of the poorest households. Out of those surveyed, more than 1/4 of households said they had no spare cash at all after they paid their housing costs. More than half had incomes below £85 per week after they had paid for essentials. 1 in 10 respondents were paid work, with one single man who was working in a 0-hours contract telling researchers how he had sometimes had to skip meals because his salary didn't cover basic expenses. So full-time workers can't pay the bills. So lazy. We're just getting the perfect illustration of how stupid capitalists are, right? What was it? Lazy people hate capitalism. Yeah, that pro-capitalist people are just desperately stupid. And should be called so. We should say it to their face in public constantly, how stupid they are. He said, I just get a bag of rice, 5 kilos of rice. That's about 12 pounds. I do myself a vegetable stew and a normal stew, and I leave it in the freezer in small bowls. He says he tries to have something to eat every day, even if it is just yogurt, but there are days I go without. One mother said, I eat only 1 meal a day. I'll probably have a bit of toast when I get home from work, but I won't eat anything else till tea. The kids will have breakfast, obviously, and then they're at school for their lunch, but I tend to just eat at nighttime because I can afford to buy things for me to eat because I can't afford to buy things for me to eat during the day. Another said she noticed a rise in the price of toiletries. My eldest daughter has a disability and is incontinent at nighttime, so she has to wear nighttime pads. They're not covered by the NHS, so I have to purchase them myself. They're $8 for 12 pads. One elderly man said he had to cut back on buying clothes. I get clothes from churches and things like that, he said. My brother gives me some clothes. I do buy a few trainers and stuff like that, but I haven't really bought clothes for a long time, to tell you the truth. Responding to the report, Action for Children called on the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt to deliver on his manifesto promise to use the benefit system to reduce child poverty. Imran Hussain, Director of Policy at the charity, said, at an absolute minimum, all benefits must be increased by inflation in the usual way. That this is even in doubt is extremely alarming. Yeah, this is what happens when you let capitalists run the place. Charlotte Hill, OBE's CEO of the Felix Project, said that the food banks and community projects the charity supports are in desperate need of more food in order to meet increasing demand. She said every single one of the charities we support wants more food, and there are over 650 new organizations on our waiting list that we cannot help. Labour MP Lynn Brown said her constituency casework had doubled. People are in great difficulty, presented with high levels of debt, she said. Schools tell me that children are lucky to get just 1 meal a day at home. Many constituents are working more than one job and still can't afford the excessive rents. A government spokesperson added, there are 1.7 million fewer people in absolute poverty than in 2010, including 400,000 fewer children. But we know some families are struggling, which is why we are providing support. Fucking embarrassing bullshit right at the end here. Like, capitalists are dumb. That not only is it about incompetence, right? It is about a kind of evil, that these people are bleak and dark and stupid. Like literally putting their boot on the back of someone and pushing them into the ground and then telling them that they're lazy for not being able to get up. That kind of level of mean-spirited stupidity. We sure are on a downward spiral, aren't we? Yeah. Yeah. Content, dude, you always make me laugh, my man. Yeah, because they're trying to use their money to keep a roof over the head and the power on, yeah. England sent billions to Ukraine and Israel, countries that have universal health care. This is a first world country, though. Oh, yeah. This has become a trope at this point, right? This has just become like a very, very trope. The disinformation police are in my Twitch. Stop right there, buddy. That's enough disinformation for one stream. Yes, the disinformation of the Independent, right? So much disinformation coming out of the Independent. Next, you're going to tell me that reading from the Toronto Star is going to be disinformation, right? Or reading from CNBC, right? Like, I know you're joking around, bud. Like, your name is Disinformation Police, and this is a funny shtick that you do, my man. I actually really love that, what you're doing. That's really fun. I hope you don't turn out to be a Nazi or something. That'd be really disappointing. Yeah, it's disinformation when commies read it. Yeah, that's right. When communists read it, it's Russian propaganda, right? It's misinformation and disinformation when communists read it. So this is one that I really loved because I actually think that maybe these capitalists will start responding. Because, like, they obviously don't care about their own children, right? Like, they obviously don't care about their own families or their own legacy. They obviously don't care about how they are viewed in the future, because they're obviously going to be viewed as evil demons, obviously. But maybe they'll actually care about money, right? We are a society and a people that worships money. We have elevated money into a religious ideology. And so, here is an article that might actually speak to the heart of the religious ideology of the capitalist death cult. The climate crisis has a price, and it's $391 million a day. Damage from the global climate crisis has amounted to $391 million per day over the past 2 decades, a report showed. Wildfires, heat waves, droughts, and other extreme events attributable to climate change have incurred costs averaging over $100 billion per year from 2000 to 2019. A recent study published in the journal Nature Communications showed. We find that $153 billion US per year of the cost of extreme events is attributable to climatic change. The majority, 63%, of this is due to human loss of life, scientists wrote in the report. The remainder stems from the destruction of property and other assets. The years with the highest amount of losses were 2008, followed by 2003, and then 2010, all of which were driven by high mortality events, the research said. Tropical cyclone Nargis struck Myanmar in 2008, which took more than 80,000 lives, according to the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. 2003 saw a severe heat wave across continental Europe, which claimed 70,000 lives. In 2010, there was a heat wave in Russia and a drought in Somalia. Yeah, none of these places are America, right? So Americans aren't going to care. Right? Like, that's the problem that we're facing, is that, like, you've really got to say how this is costing America and American lives. Because Americans don't care about anything but themselves, right? They worship themselves. The world's protracted battle with extreme weather events is one that is increasingly harder to contend with, especially as global temperatures continue to soar and disasters intensify. The world just recorded its hottest summer on record by a substantial margin, putting 2023 on course to be the hottest year on record. Over the summer, the Northern Hemisphere was inundated by a trail of extreme weather events, with repeated heat waves fueling devastating wildfires. Countries across Europe struggled with the ramifications of searing temperatures and devastating floods. In August, the U.S. also faced some of its deadliest wildfires in modern history in Maui, Hawaii. Yeah, and nobody cared, right? Nobody in the halls of power gave two shits about that at all. Those are a bunch of brown people. Who gives a fuck? On top of that, for the first time in 4 years, the El Niño weather pattern is still active heading into the winter season. This means that parts of the world, such as northern Alaska and the Gulf Coast, will likely experience a wetter than usual winter. The estimates of the losses were calculated by combining the economic data of these losses, along with how much global heating has exacerbated weather events. The research, however, notes that there is an underestimation of the true costs of climate change due to the difficulty of measuring indirect losses. Examples cited including productivity losses arising from a heat wave, mental health impacts borne by people, the loss of access to education and jobs if a place of employment is damaged. Lack of data from lower-income countries could also add to the underestimation of true costs, the study noted. The research has also pegged the value of the loss per life at $7.08 million, roughly around the estimates used by the U.S. Federal Emergency Management Agency. While the limitations of this approach are significant, this research demonstrates how a more global approximation of the human-induced extreme weather event economic costs could be constructed, the researchers noted. They called for an increase in adaptation policies to minimize these climate change-attributed costs, such as the building of flood protection or improving early warning signals heralding extreme weather events. Other organizations have also tried to quantify losses incurred by climate disaster. The World Dude, what is with this word? Meteorological. That's what it is. Why am I struggling with this? Meteorological. The World Meteorological Organization estimates that between 1970 and 2021, there were nearly 12,000 reported climate disasters that resulted in 2 million deaths and economic losses amounting to $4.3 trillion, largely from developing countries. Yeah, so who gives a fuck, right? Largely from developing countries. Who cares about them, right? Nobody gives a shit about them. The United States doesn't care about them. You got to talk about this, about how it's going to matter to white Americans. You got to talk to New Yorkers. You got to talk to Texans. And you got to be like, hey, white people in America specifically, this is how much money this is costing you. You. And not the Hispanics. And not the blacks. White people. That's the only people that you got to convince at this point. Everybody else is on board with this shit. It's just the crazy tiki torch whites that are walking around being like, climate change is a Chinese hoax, I tell you what, yuckles. Like, stop talking about this, like, developing nations. Who cares? No, they don't. They don't. Like, they care about their pocketbook. So fucking convince them. The planet is far off track from meeting its climate goals, the WMO said in a September report, adding that rising global temperatures have been accompanied by more extreme weather. Yeah. Governments agreed in the 2015 Paris Climate Accord to limit global heating to well below 2 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels and pursue efforts to limit the temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Yuck. But that seems to be a slipping target. The chance of the annual means global near-surface temperature temporarily exceeding 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels for at least one of the next 5 years is 66% and increasing over time. We're so super fucked. Da 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 da. We're super fucked. We're gonna run out of luck. Da 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 da. We're super fucked. Do 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 do. Like, it's just comedy at this point. For me, I don't know about you guys. Like, I know that some of you are over there being like, oh my God. Like, it's just hilarious to watch. Like, what's the analogy that I can give to really articulate my thoughts on it? At this point, it's like a Wile E. Coyote cartoon. That's what it is. It's like a Wile E. Coyote cartoon where he's... I wonder if I can do that. Can I do that? Can I get away with that? I feel like I want to do this while I talk about this. Wile E. Coyote. Hold on though. I gotta make sure. Filter. And there's a filter for Creative Commons. Does this exist? Does this exist? Come on. No, there isn't one single. I knew it. Nobody. See, this is why capitalists are such losers. Like, just give us this. Give us Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner that we can actually play, right? No trouble. Don't need to get into shorts or anything like this. Like, it's just, anyway. Yeah, copyright landmines. Like, it's Wile E. Coyote putting together a contraption to go after that Roadrunner. And you know it's going to fail. You know. That's why you're watching it. Right? You know that he's never going to catch that Roadrunner. You know it. Right? You know he's never going to catch that Roadrunner. That the Roadrunner is just going to go beep, beep, and leave. Right? Or some ridiculous shenaniganry will happen. And maybe it'll be something that is completely it's completely unfair. And the coyote is gonna, you know what, Content? I think that's a better analogy. You know why? You know why it's a better analogy? Because at least the coyote was attempting to do something, right? At least the coyote was attempting to do something. Like Clark Griswold for though, yeah. This I just want to be 100% Grizz. Well, yeah. This is Christmas Vacation, right? Or like National Lampoon's. Yeah, National Lampoon's Vacation. Lampoon's Vacation. Yeah. Well spelled. I did it. Like, National Lampoon's Vacation. Absolutely. Give me the picture. Here we go. What a beaut. What a beauty. What a beauty. National Lampoon's Vacation. Like, just straight up, off course, completely dim-witted, just doing whatever he wants, obviously in a crisis, not listening to anybody, just doing whatever. Yeah, that's a closer analogy, Content, because yeah, like the Wile E. Coyote thing sort of predisposes this idea that he's doing something, right? The coyote is still trying to do things. He's trying to accomplish a goal. He's failing at the goal, right? But God bless his heart. He is trying. He's getting on Rocket's shoes. He's doing death-defying stunts. He's going at high speed, and he just keeps falling off that cliff over and over and over again and just smashing into the side of mountains over and over and over again. And you know what he does? He pulls himself up by his bootstraps, and God damn it, he tries again. And he believes in his heart of heart that one day, he only needs to win once.
He only needs to win once, and then he gets that Roadrunner and he wins. Right? And in no way is that how we are acting. We're not trying. We don't give a fuck. We don't care. We're literally like sitting on couches with bags of chips, shoveling them into our face, eating burgers, being like, boy, it's getting warmer, eh? No. Sure is hot today. Sure is. We're having a warm one today, I tell you what. It seems to me that it would be snowing around this time, don't you think? Oh, well, that must be El Nino. Like, I can't even be sad about it anymore. You know? Like, I can't. It's just too dumb. Like, it's too dumb. Like, I can't sit here and be like, oh, no. Humanity is going to be scoured from the face of the planet. Like, yeah, probably. Oh, well. Like, it's self-inflicted at this point. You know? Like, it's so self-inflicted. We're just careening as fast as we can into the side of a mountain, and the only solutions that have ever been put on the table seem to be push the throttle forward as fast as possible. That's the solution. Just hit forward on the throttle, smash into the side of the mountain fast as possible. Like, I just can't feel bad about it. And I'm just not going to feel sorry about it, you know? I'm really actually looking forward. Really. And I actually genuinely mean this. And you can say that I'm callous for saying this. I don't care. I'm super looking forward to listening to white people complain about climate change. I really am. I'm just going to sit here and just be like, num, 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 num. Ooh, yeah. I'm so super hoping that there's like some rich boomer type, right? Who's going to be like, I'll be 60, they'll be 80, right? So some Gen Xer, right? And I hope I get to listen to them really complain about how climate change hurt them somehow. And I'm just going to be like, num, 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 num. Get fucked. I don't feel bad at all. Like, not even a little. Like, I hope it's somebody who really worked really hard. I hope it's somebody who, like, did everything they possibly could to get a big mansion and a big house and, like, exploit a gigantic workforce, right? I really hope they sacrificed their life for that. And I hope it's something serious. I hope it's like a heat wave that kills their family. Like, I hope it's like that. Yes. And then I'll just be like, and I hope it's a guy who, like, funded the Republican Party during, like, the Trump years. I hope it's that. I hope it's somebody who did everything they could. You know who I really hope it is? I hope it's a fossil fuel executive. I hope the son of the head of ExxonMobil has his whole family killed in a heat wave and then complains about it on national television. So that I can put it on this channel and go, ha ha, fuck you. Like, that's all we've got left, guys. Like, it's all we've got left. Like, it's absurdism at this point. It's not a tragedy. Like, it's not a tragedy. A tragedy, right? A tragedy would be humanity discovering fossil fuels, doing fossil fuel stuff, discovering that, oh my God, burning fossil fuels is sending carbon into the atmosphere, which is capturing UV radiation, which is heating the planet, which is going to melt the polar ice caps, which is going to cause crop failure, which is going to do all this kind of stuff. We've got to stop. And everybody going, you're right. Full campaign, full launch forward, to war, to war, to war. We have to fight climate change and failing. That's a tragedy. That's a tragedy. That's humanity just stepping on a landmine, capturing something, finding a power, finding something, and being a warning to future civilizations. Just because you find something cool, don't just do it, because it could be a trap. It could be a trap. We did everything we could the moment we discovered what was going on, and we failed anyway. That's a tragedy. This is comedy. This is fucking humans being like, "No, we're destroying ourselves. But boy, Bugatti. Do you see how fast my car went? I gotta get a truck that's as big as a World War II tank so that I can drive my kids to school and everybody can see how big my cock is." It takes me about 40 minutes to drive there, so I thought I'd just take the private jet. It only takes 5 minutes in the private jet. Like, we deserve it completely, and I'm not going to feel bad about it at all as I watch it happen. Like, I'm not. I'm going to make fun of these people. I'm going to laugh. And I'm not gonna laugh at the victims, at the people who are just like, I'm just a person who's sort of sitting around. But I'm definitely, like, if Taylor Swift gets fucked over, right? Like if Jeff Bezos gets fucked over, if like these people get fucked over, I'm gonna be like, haha, you fucking dim-witted rich people, eat it. Like that guy that blew himself up in the submarine. We remember that, right? Everybody remember that? What was the name of that submarine? Submarine, self-made implosion, rich guy. Last text of British billionaire and missing Titanic sub revealed. Oh man, what did he write? No, I gotta know. Right? I gotta know. Chilling last text of British billionaire stuck in missing Titanic sub revealed. I love that we all universally came together and made fun of these guys. Like, no compassion, no empathy whatsoever. Haha, you died. The chilling final text of a British billionaire trapped inside the Titanic brown submersible that vanished deep below the water off the Newfoundland on Sunday revealed that weather had been bad for sea travel in the days leading up to the trip. Just like literally everything was telling these guys, don't do this. Do not do this. A day before the Ocean Gate Expedition's operating sub was launched, renowned world explorer Hamish Harding. His name was Hamish Harding. Hamish Harding. That's his name. That's a person's name. God, this is the gift that keeps on giving. Sent his friend, retired NASA astronaut, Colonel Terry Virts, an update on his grand voyage set to drop 12,500 feet beneath the surface to view the famous shipwreck. This is actually pretty well written. I got to tell you, whoever wrote this really put some love into this. Who wrote this? Isabel Keene. Good for you, Isabel. That arts degree is paying out. I tell you what. There's a lot of good language in here. Hey, we're heading out tomorrow. It looks good. The weather's been bad, so they've been waiting for this. Harding, 58, messaged Virts. While sharing the final message with ITV's Good Morning, Virts said he and his adventure-seeking friend don't really talk about risks. He understood the risks, for sure. There's no doubt about that. Wait a minute. That's the chilling text? Isabel. You set me up, Isabel. Chilling text. Hey, we're heading out tomorrow. It looks good. The weather's been bad, so they've been waiting for this. Actually, it would be more accurately... That's more accurate. My bad. He went down to the deepest part of the ocean, set a few world records at the Mariana Trench, the deepest part of the ocean, and we talked quite a bit about the risks and the different things that they were going to be able to do. So he was very excited about it. Yeah, I think they did set a world record, right? For deepest deep sea implosion. Right? They're at the deepest point in the sea and then imploded. That's got to be a record, right? A day before the expedition turned off, Hamish Harding shared his excitement about the trip on Instagram. Oh, perfect. Let's see this. The deep sea voyage was poised to be the latest in Harding's impressive travel resume, with the explorer having been one of the 6 astronauts to visit space aboard the Blue Origin mission last year. Oh, perfect. So before he killed himself doing this, he was trying to kill himself doing that. Just like shitting out carbon and like fossil fuel shit all over us. So that he could look up at the stars and go, this is mine. I'm important. Harding, who boasts 3 Guinness World Records for his daring exploits, has also made multiple trips to the South Pole, including one with retired Apollo astronaut Buzz Aldrin, who became the oldest person to reach the pole at 86. 4 others are stuck aboard the submersible with Harding, including one of Pakistan's wealthiest men. One of Pakistan's wealthiest men, Shahzada Dawood, and his son, Sulaiman Dawood. Fantastic. It's unclear who else was aboard the ship, though Harding wrote in a social media post that he would be joined by Frenchy Navy diver P.H. Narjolet, who previously led several expeditions to the Titanic. Ocean Gate Expeditions, the private company that launched the vessels, offers private tours to the Titanic wreckage site for $250,000 a person. The company touts its 8-day trip to the Titanic as a chance to step outside the and then it turns into an ad. The company touts its 8-day trip to the Titanic as a chance to step outside of everyday life and discover something truly extraordinary. The vessel, which cannot submerge and return to port on its own like a submarine, was reported missing Sunday night after it failed to return to its support ship on time. Coast Guard crews said Monday night they have just 70 to 96 hours to locate the missing sub and rescue the 5 people aboard before the vessel runs out of oxygen. Dude, climate change is fake. Shut up. Like, shut up. I can't believe there are still people who are seriously like this. Like, really? Climate change is fake. It's just getting hotter year after year. I put a pot of water on the stove and then turned the heat up. It won't boil. Like, come on. Like, come on. Like, why we gotta be like this? Like, why are we this dumb? Right? Like, why are we this dumb? Literally, this year breaks the heat record for recorded heat, breaking the record set the year previously, which broke the record of the year set previously. So, getting hotter. Climate change is fake. It used to snow this time of year, and now I'm walking around in a t-shirt. Climate change is fake. Like, like, it's just like, it's astounding. It's astounding, the dimwittery. It's just astounding to see how dumb we are. And, like, to me, that's gotta be the big takeaway of all of this, right? Of all of humanity, is like, you can appear to be intelligent and be just the dumbest person alive. You know? Like, humanity has the appearance of intelligence, right? We look like we're clever. We look like we're intelligent. But we're actually a lot stupider than most of the other creatures walking around. Like, we're probably dumber than crows. We're probably dumber than owls. We're probably dumber than like octopi and dolphins, right? We just have these like graspers that let us fuck around and do stuff. And so we do, and then we look at one another and go, look at how clever and smart we are, while we immolate ourselves on a planet and then say it's not happening. Like, yeah, if climate change is fake, then the earth is flat and the grass is purple, and there are people that think that the earth is flat, dude. Right? Yeah, Ligand to Z, yeah. But it just reaffirms something I've been saying all along. These people don't care about their own children. Like, even if you believed that submarine was like made by the U.S. Navy and was like seal of approval, it's still a very dangerous thing to do, right? There's still a lot of risk associated with it. And these people don't care. They don't give a shit about their own children. That he wanted his son to come along so that when it was over, he could go, haha, my boy, my trophy that I have. Like, they don't give a fuck about their children. Period. Full stop. They don't care. Children exist to be little badges for them to wear. And as a way for them to attain immortality. That when I go, my boy will be there and he'll carry on my legacy. Right? That's all it is for these people. Like, they don't give a fuck about their children. Zero fucks. They don't care. That if somehow the society venerated something other than children, and there was a way to pass his legacy forward without his kids, he just wouldn't have had them. The sub thing was very revealing to me. When people would bring up the rich guy's kid, I would say thousands of kids die of completely preventable causes because they're poor. The looks I'd get. Yeah. No one cares about poor kids. No one cares. Unless it's Hamas doing it. Then everybody cares, right? But if it's just like random shit, like if kids die in a wildfire in Maui, what are you going to do? That wildfires are normal. That's a normal and natural part of the life cycle of life. You know, people have been dying in wildfires for millions of years. There's nothing unique or special about this one. Climate change is real. Like, I think the one thing that carries a lot of like sort of poetic justice to it is that like one of the first places in America that's going to suffer the biggest is the Deep South. Like, the Deep South is going to get hit by climate change in a way that I can't even really articulate in a manner that really, like the air is going to turn against them. Like, that's something that I can't even begin to really get people to grip. You know? I can see people sort of glaze on that one when I actually mention it. That, like, it's not just the water coming up, right? It's not just that desert is going to come through. It's not just those things. It's that there's going to be moments that are called a wet bulb, where the air will become, and it only takes a minute, right? If you stop breathing for 5 minutes, you're dead. Right? 5 minutes of not being able to breathe, you're fucking dead. Right? So they're saying that there's going to be... Hold on, I better look this up. Let's get our facts completely right. I don't want to spread around disinformation or else the disinformation police will show up. What is wet bulb temperature? There you go. And of course, the first thing, why large parts of Earth might become uninhabitable due to climate change. Sure, Yahoo. Get the hell out of here. If global temperatures increase by 1 degree more than current temperatures, billions of people will be exposed to heat and humidity so extreme they will be unable to cool themselves. Humans can only withstand certain combinations of heat and humidity before their bodies begin to experience heat-related health problems, such as heat stroke or heart attack. As climate change pushes temperatures higher around the world, billions of people could be pushed beyond these limits. New research from the Penn State College of Health and Human Development, Purdue University College of Science, and Purdue University Institute for Sustainable Future suggests that huge areas of the world, including Pakistan, India, and China, could see unsurvivable heat waves. Wet bulb temperatures refer to any sort of thermometer measurement built to measure heat and humidity. Human beings can survive very high temperatures when humidity is low, but in high humidity, humans cannot survive temperatures of even 35 degrees Celsius because there's no way to cool down by sweating. Wet bulb thermometers are a specialized device to allow researchers to work out whether humans can sweat. If the water evaporates, the thermometer cools down, so that wet bulb temperatures are lower than dry bulb temperatures. In high humidity, the weather will not evaporate, and the wet bulb temperature will be the same as the dry bulb temperature. The ambient wet bulb temperature limit for young, healthy people is about 31 degrees Celsius at 100% humidity, according to the work. Where could temperatures exceed human limits? In human history, blah, 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 yabba, yabba, the 2.2 billion residents of Pakistan, the 1 billion people living in eastern China, 800 million residents of sub-Saharan Africa will annually experience many hours of heat. Troublingly, researchers said these regions are also in lower to middle income nations, so many of the affected people may not have access to air conditioning. Like, is it straight up they're saying that, like, North America is just off the hook? Like, is that what I'm seeing? That, like, China is going to get completely fucked over, but America's perfectly fine. Nah. Like, seems to me like the Deep South is in deep trouble. 31 degrees Celsius at 100% humidity. So 2 billion people at plus 2 degrees Celsius become suicide attackers. Cool. Yeah, America is the land of the gods. Of course. We're not going to actually tell people what's going to happen in America. That'd be something a scientist would do. Besides, climate change isn't real. Oh, only every single institution on Earth and every single person who's actually studied it, outside of the people who are directly paid by the people creating the problem, agree that climate change is real, including nations that are at direct conflict and in direct war with one another. It's a hoax, obviously. Like, hold on. No. It's got to be the case. Wet bulb temperature in America. Like, but like, interactive map. Daily wet bulb temperature. Yeah, I knew it. Yeah, I called it, you bitches. Everybody was doubting me. Everybody was saying, nah, John, it's bullshit. You're totally wrong. America's completely fine. Land of the gods. Well, here's an interactive map. Deep South in deep shit. That's what it is. I'm the greatest. All the haters, they're just haters. Nobody was hating me. Nobody. Not even a single person. You guys were all just like, yeah, that makes sense. Totally reasonable. I'm the greatest of my generation. No one's more intelligent or smart than me. I'm the Kanye West of climate change forecasting. I don't know. Anybody else having trouble with the stream? Let us know. Oh, I still have the before-after map of Utah? I think I do, actually. The climate change deception. Hold on. Gotta find it. I think that's it. from NASA. Oh no, this is just like the NASA just being NASA. This is straight up just like the hard evidence. Like, come on. Boop, like climate change. The Earth is constantly changing. You know, the trouble with saying the climate. The trouble with the climate is that the climate, well, that could mean anything and everything. And yeah, when you're analyzing everything, then you can't really do anything. David, good to see you. Oddity, good to see you. The CIA using their internet service disruption gun. Yeah. Dude, wouldn't it be crazy if this whole channel just devolved into a comedy show with like, I literally have like a honking horn where every episode it's not me being like, oh, I'm so angry, but literally I'm just like, and then 1 million people died. Well, maybe it's real, but China is to blame. It'll be fine, guys. Just crank up the AC. Thanks, Resist to Colonizers. Those are good lines. Those are good lines. CH comedy. Well done, sir. Is that a Jordan Peterson impression? Yes. I have the greatest Jordan Peterson impression of all the Jordan Peterson impressions. Because when you're looking in the world, you have to understand that when you're having dreams of your grandmother trying to touch your wiener, that it's very important that you let her touch your wiener. Yeah, dude. Capitalists will always... My favorite one, there's this absolute total psychopath named David Migablagba or something. He's one of these guys that's like hard nose, hard nails kind of guy. And somebody asked him straight up, like, what about climate change? Like, climate change is going to destroy everything. We're not divesting. We're not doing anything. And his answer was, if climate change was real, then the banks wouldn't be buying up property on the coast. And of course, this grift exists in order to convince you that, like, oh, I guess that's fine, forgetting that the banks just get bailed out, right? That his argument is that, well, they wouldn't take such a risk if climate change was real, right? They would have risk assessment, and they would do that. But they don't have risk assessment because it doesn't matter if they lose all those assets because they've got to deal with the government to get bailed out, right? Since 2008, that's been the case. So we've got all these frauds and phonies walking around pretending as though reality doesn't exist because money tells you. Like, it's crazy. That will make the channel blow up. It's not hard. JPB is basically a suck already. Dude, I don't know if I want to bring the heat to myself, you know? I don't know if I want the the Jordan Peterson people are a new breed, man. They're a different breed. Like, when I talk about that third pillar, like the daddy worship, right? So some people, the daddy worship is their dad, right? Some people, the daddy worship is the empire. It's the United States government or the empire or the media system, right? Or the hierarchy, right? That's their daddy worship. The people who are like Jordan Peterson fans, right? Who are like the diehard JPB fans who want to see and read his National Post articles and all this, that's their dad. Jordan Peterson is their dad. And like, I don't know that I want that heat. I don't know that I want to have a daily segment where I'm like, hey everybody, I'm a complete and total fraud. Ha ha! And have a bunch of Jordan Peterson people coming in here being like, if you're saying those things about Jordan Peterson because you're not smart enough to understand what he's saying. You gotta understand what he's saying before you get to talk about him because it's my daddy you're talking about. Yeah, I just don't think I want it. You know? Dude, I hit my leg right there. When I brought this hand down and I hit my leg, I actually hurt my leg. My leg hurts now. Great. Good to have you back, Oddity. Elon and Jordan should get a room together. They could be Jorlon. I like that. Jorlan or Edan. Jorlan is better. Jorlan is better. Yeah, the banks literally buy things they know they can sell to idiots and get bailed out if that fails. Yeah. Yeah, JPB people are so fucking stupid and pathetic. They will help what they attack. Like, one of the things I think it's like completely fine, right? It's like I completely get that. Like, if you read 12 Rules for Life or listened to one of his lectures and it was like inspiring, I was like, I understand that. Like, he does have a certain skill set, and his goal is not terrible in that regard. It's just like he became this like obvious creepy weirdo, right? Like he's just on this creepy weirdo path now, dude. Like the cock milking porn incident is one thing. The Elliot Page video, come on, man! Like the Elliot Page video, Jordan Peterson Elliot Page video, like this moment. When he released this, are we gonna? Yeah, here. Like he gets in this suit. And he's talking to the camera. I'd rather die than delete those tweets. Right? Like this guy's nuts, and it's really obvious that he's fucking nuts. Look at him. Today I would like to address Twitter's suspension of my account from the vile, hateful misgendering of in this confusing naming apparatus. I'd rather die than delete those. Right, this guy's nuts. Like, this guy's a complete and total fucking fraud. Like an utter fraud. You know what's so wild to me about the transphobic shit that this guy propagates? Just the absolute utter transphobic shit. If he's not capable, if he's confused by the naming structure of trans people, then he cannot be trusted with basic shit. You know why? When I was 6, I was in kindergarten. I had a teacher. Her name was Miss Nelson. Yeah? One day, Miss Nelson came into the room and said, "Hello, children. I have been married. This is a social convention in which a man and a woman bond. And I, the woman, have followed the traditional line and have taken on the name of my partner, of my husband. So now my name is Mrs. Zacharias." My initial thought, of course, was, Nelson is so easy. I'm 6. What's a Z? Oh no. And for a little period of time, this little group of kindergartners really struggled with the whole thing, that it was Miss Zacharias, Mrs. Nelson, Miss Nelson, right? And eventually, slowly through time, because she would just gently correct us and we would gently go along, and everybody knew we were all trying our best. We eventually landed on Mrs. Zacharias. And not one of us at any moment stood up and said, "Your name is Miss Nelson. This is a confusing naming structure that I can't possibly go along with." Because we all understood intrinsically that we were doing it because she asked us to. And that's all. That's it. Just basic human shit. And the only way in which the trans experience is slightly different is that it's affected pronouns, right? She, her, he, him, they, them, right? But is that much different of a change of social convention than Mrs. to Miss, right? Is that big a leap? And then they'll always bring up my absolute favorite, just the Soussan. They'll say, but they it's a plural. And so you say they, and suddenly there's multiple people. Oh my God. But here's what's funny. Here's what's funny about that stupid thing that these morons say. These obvious demented psychos. Is that if you don't know the gender of a person, you default to they. Right? Like, if somebody says to you, you're going to go meet Professor Zacharias on Tuesday, you go, where can I find their office? And you just do that. Because you don't know their gender. And so rather than assuming their gender, right? Because you could say, well, where can I find his office? And then they'll say her office. Or you could say, where can I find her office? And they would go, his office. And so what do? Naturally, you go, well, where can I find their office? And then they will either say his office, her office, or their office. And we do it naturally. And the idea that it's confusing multiple plural, it's did you know that the English language is loaded with things called context clues? That we have tons and tons of examples of words that we use that in one context mean one thing, but in another context means another thing. Yeah. They're going to the store. It's over there. They're over here. Let's go over there. To where they're at. Confusing. But we understood all of it because of context clues. Because human beings are actually kind of clever when it comes to language. We actually have built a whole fucking way to communicate. We're not dumb. We go along with things. We're only stupid in the meta sense. Like this guy. Stupid in the meta sense. Oh, wrong way. This guy. What a dummy. Just look at this, though, dude. Like, he looks like a supervillain. Doesn't he? He's just, like, curling his fingers. Oh, we're the trans people. I think I will... There's actually a really great on YouTube. I've watched it several times. I don't know why I've watched it several times. But some more news. Jordan Peterson. This is probably the best takedown of Peterson I've ever seen. Oh, come on. There it is. A brief look at Jordan Peterson. The video's 3 hours long. It's a 3 hour long video that they did on Jordan Peterson. And if you guys don't know the Some More News guy, Cody, this guy's actually brilliant. Like, he's actually a brilliant. Like, he is doing the work of the Lord, what he's doing. Come on, give me a really good frame. That'll do. He manages to really capture, up yours, woke moralists. Like, imagine hating somebody who is awake. That's the best part about this woke stuff. It's literally somebody being like, It's important to know things and be aware of what's going on in your society in a higher meta sense. I hate that about you! Yeah, trans are just the new minority to attack and foment fear about. Fascists always need these targets to rally around. Yeah, and trans people don't have a lot of allies, and there's not a lot of them, so they're easy prey. If you won't respect others' named and pronouns, then you are John Doe, and your pronouns are it that. Just call all these pronoun protesters it and that, and if they choose your pronouns, you can choose theirs. So above, I should say JPB only exists as a media personality because its daughter. His and her are recent additions to English. You will find neither in Shakespeare. Like, did you know, guys? Crazy. This is an absolute crazy fact. It's gonna blow your minds, right? It's really gonna wake you up. Did you know that the English language changes over time? Were you aware of that? That the English language changes over time. Yeah. We invent new words and new ways to communicate with one another. Did you know that? I didn't know that until just now. All right, guys, we've reached the end of this one. Always remember, each and every one of you is a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.